Clearly, both are orphan girls with tragic backgrounds, yet they give their all to protect the boy's safety. Even while asleep, she stays close to guard him, simply because she accidentally awakened to the fact that she is a transmigrator. In the original novel, the girl was a disposable villain who was expelled from the orphanage and froze to death on the streets for bullying the male lad Damian. To change her tragic fate, Ellie began her career as Damian's bodyguard. She just needed to hold out until Duke Schuetz came to adopt the male lad. Once the original storyline unfolds and the heroine begins her happy life with him, Ellie can save her own life and regain her freedom. However, the plot starts to deviate in absurd ways. The Duke wants to take her home too. I want her to be my daughter-in-law. In this country, one of the noble's greatest hobbies is adopting orphans. To win favor with the nobility, the orphanage director only accepts children who are good-looking. Ellie was one of them, but because her mother was once a divine head. The nobles despised her, leading to her being abandoned 3 times, until by accident she awakened to her identity as a transmigrator. Familiar with the original novel's plot, she longed to meet one person, the male lad Damian. Damian was once the young master of the Clyde ducal house. Since the Clyde family held immense power and wealth, the emperor gradually grew wary of them and ultimately decided to eliminate them. The Duke and Duchess fell off a cliff and perished. However, it seemed the Clyde Duke had foreseen this day, as he had left a will in advance. He entrusted all his assets to his only friend, Duke Schuetz, for safekeeping. Meanwhile, Duke Schuetz began searching for his lost friend's son, Damian, who went missing during the incident, and today marks Damian's official debut. Having lived as a slave since childhood, Damian had endured endless suffering, his body covered in wounds, malnourished and frail. Seeing him in such a state, Ellie couldn't help but feel sorry for him. The orphanage director gave a brief introduction and then left. The oldest child in the orphanage case stood up aggressively, leading a group of followers ready to initiate the newcomer. In the original story, Ellie was one of them, but this time, to save her own life, she decisively refused Case's invitation. He looked too weak. Noticing the lifeless look in the boy's eyes, Ellie recalled her own experiences of being bullied. She shivered instinctively just as it was time for a meal. Knowing that Damian's days of being bullied were about to begin, Ellie planned to feign ignorance and stay out of it. After all, he was the novel's male lad. With his protagonist halo, he would surely have a bright future. A few beatings wouldn't matter, but while she told herself this, her body instinctively wanted to help. Remembering that hollow gaze, Ellie ultimately decided to step in just this once, never again. When she knocked on the door, she immediately saw Damian slumped on the floor after being beaten. A trace of pity flashed in her eyes. She couldn't help but mock Case, then quickly changed to a smile and made up an excuse, saying the director was calling for them. Case grabbed Damian and issued a few threats before swaggering away with his followers. Only then did Ellie step forward to check his injuries. When she saw him casually wiping away the blood, she quickly stopped him. She pulled out an ointment she had stolen from the director's office to help treat his wounds, but he refused. "It's pointless," he said. "Before the wounds can heal, I'll just get beaten again." Ellie hadn't expected him to understand such a cruel truth at such a young age, that resistance only brought more beatings, and only submission could stop the violence. But she still shoved the ointment into his hands and turned to leave. She had thought reading the novel would make her indifferent to the male lad's suffering. But seeing his pitiful face, so similar to her own, inexplicably made her heart ache. After all, this boy was the son of the richest family in the empire. The days were worse than a dog's life ever since Damian's parents were secretly assassinated by the emperor. As the sole survivor, Damian began a life of darkness and slavery, enduring bullying even in the orphanage. She endured everything silently, trying to survive. During mealtime, Ellie didn't see Damian. Gumayan was a bit worried, fearing the boy might be starving. Ellie specifically saved some bread for him, but after searching everywhere, she couldn't find him. Just then, Case approached with his gang and told Ellie that she had just overheard the orphanage director talking. They said that Damian used to be a slave and had once hunted monsters in complete darkness. With that tiny frames, no way, Ellie, don't tell me you're interested in that guy. Ellie's heart tightened. Case was someone who bullied most of the children in the orphanage. Especially those Ellie showed interest in, he targeted them even more viciously, simply because he had feelings for Ellie. She couldn't let Damian be bullied again. Ellie smiled playfully. "No, I just saw him heading to the warehouse. Maybe the teachers took him for some special treatment. After all, he looks so good, so they favor him, right?" The director even said he could hunt monsters, meaning he must be very strong. Ellie's praise made Case extremely displeased, to prove he was stronger than Damian. Case led his gang toward the warehouse, planning to teach him a lesson, but Ellie stopped him, handing him something. "This is specially for you." This made Case a little embarrassed. He thought it was a gift from his crush, but it was actually a trap. When they arrived at the warehouse and found no sign of Damian, They were caught red-handed by the teachers and accused of stealing, with the bread in their hands serving as undeniable evidence. Severe punishment awaited them. Late at night, when everything was silent, Ellie went out alone to look for Damian. Remembering the rumor that he had once hunted monsters in the dark, she wondered could he be hiding deep in the forest. In the original novel, the Duke once asked Damian why he was so skilled in swordsmanship at such a young age. To survive in the darkness, I had to train relentlessly. Originally, she thought this line was just to emphasize the male lead's tragic upbringing. But when she found him curled up in the forest, she realized it was real. You'll get sick like this. Case and his gang have already been punished by the teachers. You can sleep peacefully tonight, come back with me, but Damian didn't move, that's only temporary, they'll be back tomorrow. I still think it's more comfortable here. Ellie realized Damian had been trapped in a dark abyss of suffering for too long. He would rather endure the freezing snow than be around people, but could anyone truly live like this forever? She promised him they won't come back, and even if they do, they'll disappear soon, I guarantee it. No one will bully you again, looking at the girl's gentle face. Damian felt a moment of daze. The image of Ellie giving him ointment resurfaced in his mind. A warmth he had never felt before wrapped around him. Why are you being so nice to me? Because I want to, it was Ellie's sincere answer. She couldn't let things play out as tragically as they did in the original story. She extended her hand to the boy. Let's go eat. Damian took that hand. As if grasping onto hope of escaping the darkness, the girl quietly led him into the bedroom. Then suddenly told him to take off his clothes, leaving Damian utterly bewildered. I told you to take off your clothes, how else are you going to take a bath? Only the orphanage director's bathroom has hot water. You are out in the snow and are practically frozen. If you don't soak in warm water quickly, you'll get frostbite and your hands and feet will rot. Seeing the boy remain motionless for a long time, Ellie thought he was feeling shy. Unexpectedly, Damian timidly said, my body looks disgusting. If you see it, you'll definitely be scared. Ellie realized what she meant. When she was a slave before, her body must have been covered in scars, right? Ellie held her hand. Your body is not disgusting at all, so you don't need to be upset. We can't waste any more time. If the director comes back, we won't be able to bathe. After saying that, Damian was thrown into the bathroom, her whole body soaking in the hot water. The long-lost feeling of comfort made her completely relax. After she finished washing, Ellie peeked in and asked, feels nice, right? She also brought clean clothes for her to wear, but the size was too big, so they hung loosely on her. Ellie even stole a sandwich from the storage for her, but having lived as a slave since childhood, Damian had never seen one before. This was absolutely outrageous. Just how cruel were those slave traders? How could they treat a child like this? This is called a sandwich, just bite into it directly. Watching Ellie eat with enjoyment, Damian followed her example and took a big bite. What kind of heavenly food is this? Her silly expression made her look like a chubby little puppy. Seeing that Damian's hair was still dripping, Ellie picked up a towel and helped dry it. She even reminded her not to catch a cold. Her caring words made Damian rely on Ellie even more. She even bent down slightly to make it easier for Ellie to dry her hair. Her obedient appearance completely melted Ellie's heart. At that moment, Ellie suddenly noticed. On the side of her neck, there was a scar that looked like a beast bite. Damian explained, it was already there when my master found me, so I always kept my hair long. After hearing this, Ellie only felt sadness. Just how cruel was the world Damian lived in. She lifted the boy's thick bangs, and the moment their eyes met, Ellie was stunned by how breathtaking she looked. That pure face, those deep blue eyes, they were even more beautiful than she had imagined. Seeing Ellie staring at her, Damian blushed slightly. Ellie thought she might have a fever. She hurriedly asked, are you feeling unwell? No, I just feel a little warm. Only then did Ellie feel relieved. After that, she took Damian back to the room. Cassie had been taken away by the teacher and hadn't returned yet, but to prevent her from coming back and bullying Damian. Tonight you'll sleep in my bed with me, sleep here. As the protagonist's bodyguard, the girl was always on duty, even sharing a bed with her. This left Damian completely flustered, under Ellie's urge. She blushed deeply, her whole body stiff as she awkwardly climbed into bed. The moment they got close, Ellie caught a whiff of the scent coming from Damian's body. It smells so nice, maybe just one more sniff. Wait, am I being weird? Ellie quickly said goodnight to Damian, but the girl remained motionless. Aren't you going to say goodnight to me? Damian softly whispered goodnight, then buried herself under the covers. This sight nearly melted Ellie's heart. Soon she fell asleep. Meanwhile, Damian opened her big eyes, quietly watching Ellie. Why is she so nice to me? Is it because of guilt, thinking back on everything Ellie had done for her that day? Am I really not disgusting? When she looked into my eyes, they were so beautiful and bright. But I'm just a slave, I can't have expectations. I must not expect anything. With these thoughts, Damian finally fell asleep, in her dreams. The horrors of her past resurfaced once again. In the darkness, she was all alone. Facing terrifying monsters while her master watched with amusement, eagerly anticipating the fight, no one came to help her. She could only rely on herself to fight the beasts to the death. Damian, Ellie's call finally pulled her out of the nightmare. She gasped for air, panting heavily. Seeing this, Ellie became very worried. "You're sweating so much. Are you sick?" Damian was at a loss. No one had ever cared for her like this before. She grabbed Ellie's hand, stopping her from getting medicine, and insisted that she was fine. The girl gently patted the boy's head, causing Damian to feel something unfamiliar. Her heartbeat quickened as if warmth was spreading through her entire body like sunlight. "If I say I'm not feeling well, will Ellie be even nicer to me?" As she thought this, a sudden loud bang interrupted her. The door was flung open and Case stormed in angrily. "Ellie, you tricked me on purpose, didn't you?" Seeing through Ellie's scheme, Case directed all her anger at Damian. "It's all because of this brat, isn't it?" Ellie stepped in front of Damian. "You got tricked." "Because you're just too stupid." Furious, Case charged forward. "How could you do this to me?" Just then the teacher walked in, catching her bullying red-handed. Case desperately tried to explain. "Ellie started it. She tricked me into going to the storage room yesterday." Seeing the teacher's doubtful gaze, Ellie immediately turned on her acting skills, tears welling up. She looked pitiful and wronged. "Yesterday, Damian was sick. I wanted to ask the teacher for medicine, but Case told me all the teachers went to the casino instead." Tears glistened in Ellie's eyes. "There's no way the teachers would abandon us just to go gambling, right?" Hearing this, the teacher became visibly nervous. Because not only had she been gambling, but she had also been having a secret rendezvous with her lover in the storage room. Seeing Ellie cry even more pitifully and threaten to report to the director, the teacher quickly stopped her. She shifted all the blame onto Case, dragged her outside, and gave her a harsh punishment. Case was beyond frustrated, but no amount of arguing could clear her name. The room fell silent. It seemed Damian wouldn't be bullied anytime soon. Ellie turned to look at the bewildered boy. She grinned proudly. "See, I told you I won't let anyone bully you again." Case, now fuming, was plotting her revenge. But how could she compete with the drama queen in front of her? Just a few tears from Ellie and she had already lost completely. Meanwhile, she could only rage helplessly in confinement. Case clenched her teeth in anger. Yet with her love-struck mind, she didn't blame Ellie at all. No, it had to be that Damian kid stirring up trouble. "Just wait, I'll be the only one Ellie cares about." After the commotion ended, Damian still had a puzzled expression. Ellie reassured him adults should help children. "One day someone will come to help you too. When that happens, trust them. You'll have a happy life." Ellie was hinting at the future arrival of the Grand Duke and the heroine. But to Damian, the angelic Ellie was the true key to her happiness. Ellie had no idea what was going on in Damian's mind. She thought he was just worried about her lying to the teacher earlier. Just as Ellie was about to explain, the boy spoke first. He understood everything. "If you're seeking revenge, you have to be ruthless. I may have lied, but it's much better than suffering silently." She warned Damian, "Don't just endure things quietly and let others push you around." Watching the girl's beautiful side profile, Damian realized it was the first time she had ever heard words like these. All her life, she had only known how to obey her master's every command in order to survive. But now, for Ellie's sake, she made up her mind she would become stronger. Just like Ellie protected her, she would protect Ellie too, and I mean it. The orphanage director woke up with a hangover after a night of partying, opened the door, and saw Damian and Ellie busy in the kitchen. How did this slave end up here working? It turns out that the director had made an agreement with Damian's owner. During her absence, she would help raise the slave and send him back shortly after. If her owner ever found out she had ordered him around, she knew she would be in trouble. Just as the director was about to call Damian, she was interrupted by the noise outside. It turned out that Cassie had sneaked out of the small black room and was caught. She angrily came to find Damian to settle the score. The director asked what had happened, and the teacher explained that Cassie had stolen something from the warehouse and had been arguing about it. The director ordered the teacher to take her away, realizing there was no way to avoid this. "I can't always be the one at a disadvantage," she said, pointing. Actually, Damian also went to the warehouse. "No, Damian didn't go to the warehouse," Ellie quickly interjected. "He was sick at the time and stayed with me in the room." Ellie immediately defended Damian. This surprised the director. Since being abandoned 3 times, Ellie had always kept to herself. It was strange that she would actively speak up for Damian now. In front of the girls, she was obedient and docile, but in front of others, her cruel nature showed. The male lead, the dog, plays double standards, clearly only seeking to monopolize the girls' gentleness. Just then, the director, tired of the kids' disputes, ordered the teacher to handle the situation. She also told them to take Damian away and not let him work anymore. The boy, however, clung tightly to Ellie's clothes. He was reluctant to leave her side until the girl patted his head. "I'll come find you once work is done," Ellie said, and only then did Damian reluctantly follow the teacher. In the noisy cafeteria, Damian squatted alone in the corner, patiently waiting for Ellie to come find him. He didn't want to be alone, but he also didn't want Ellie to dislike him for being too clingy, until he heard Ellie calling him. All the previous discomfort disappeared in an instant. Holding her small hand, he carefully asked if he could sit next to her. Just then, Tommy suddenly appeared, exerting her strong powers as a third wheel. "The seat next to Ellie is mine," she said. She had been sitting there before Damian arrived. Damian, furious, asked, "Who are you? Are you trying to take care of the new arrival? Ellie would let a handsome boy like me sit there, right?" Tommy immediately gave up the seat. "I'll give it to you because I'm the most handsome man," she said, looking at Damian's youthful face, thinking he was just a pure and kind kid. At that moment, a girl's crying voice was heard. It turned out she had accidentally dirtied her doll while eating. The girl told them to eat first while she went to comfort the doll. "Don't worry, the toy is just a little wet." "I'll go clean it up for you, sister," Ellie said, leaving. Damian fell silent again as he watched her leave. Tommy took the initiative to introduce herself, but Damian just gave her a cold glance and turned away. Tommy thought she was scared and explained, "I'm Ellie's good friend. We can all play together in the future." However, as soon as Damian heard good friend, his gaze immediately turned cold and he stared at Tommy with a gloomy look. Tommy felt the temperature around her drop sharply. Just then, Ellie returned and asked Damian if he had eaten well. The boy, who had been sulking, immediately became obedient and nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. He ate obediently in big mouthfuls, and Tommy's expression was like she had seen a ghost. But Damian's warning gaze made her too scared to say anything more, though she couldn't help but silently complain. "This kid is not innocent at all, he's simply a fierce beast." "Ellie, you've been terribly deceived. The boy is clearly someone who could take down a monster. But he pretends to be a well-behaved little puppy in front of the girl, just to become someone special in her heart." That day, after Damian finished his bath, Ellie helped him dry his hair as usual. Looking at his little pouty face, she really wanted to indulge him, but then she thought, what if his face is noticed by some noble and taken away? That can't happen. According to the original plot, Damian's adoptive father must be a person of shame, so before they meet, no one should see his beauty. The two returned to the bedroom to prepare for bed. Ellie pointed to a bed next to the wall and told Damian he would sleep there from now on. Damian didn't quite get it. "Does that mean we can't sleep together?" The boy's mood immediately dropped. He stayed silent for a while, then slowly climbed into his own bed, his mood very low. He felt like a dog rejected by its owner. Ellie thought he was just tired. As usual, she said goodnight and wished him sweet dreams. Damian thought for a moment. "I wish you sweet dreams too," he replied, which made Ellie feel unexpectedly happy. This was the first time Damian had called her name. Just hearing his words made her so happy. In the middle of the night, Ellie got up to use the bathroom. But she found Damian was gone. By the side, a doll was being hugged anxiously. "Brother Cassie is back." Ellie heard this and immediately realized something was wrong. And indeed it was. At that moment, Cassie, along with some others, was surrounding Damian and beating him up. After holding in his frustration for days, he finally got the chance to lash out. "I'll tell you, you mean nothing," to Ellie. Hearing this, Damian's eyes turned cold and terrifying. He stared intensely at Cassie. Recalling Ellie's words to him that he should no longer tolerate being bullied, the boy clenched his fists, ready to fight back. But Cassie's words made him freeze. "Ellie would only feel sorry for someone weak and useless like you. Don't flatter yourself into thinking you're special. She only pities you." These words shattered Damian's heart. He was used to such hurtful words from his days as a slave, but hearing that he meant nothing to Ellie made him feel suffocated, as if trapped in mud. Damian's heart was like dead ashes. He had already given up on resisting. Cassie continued her assault, grabbing Damian by the hair. She shoved him into the lake. Damian mumbled Ellie's name as he sank. In the next second, Ellie rushed forward, grabbing Damian. The girl, unable to hide her anger, stared at Cassie. "What are you doing?" When Ellie woke up, she found that the boy was gone. Upon learning that Cassie had taken him away, Ellie quickly ran to the lakeside. This was Cassie's usual trick. Whenever she hated someone, she'd push them into the lake. Ellie felt defeated but was relieved to see Damian. At the critical moment, she rushed over to pull him up. Ellie angrily questioned Cassie, "Are you insane? How could you do something so life-threatening?" Cassie felt wronged. To her, Ellie had changed. Not only had she stopped bullying others for fun, but she also treated Damian with kindness and care. This change made Cassie incredibly jealous of Damian. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became, raising her fist and charging at Damian. Ellie, quick to act, caught Damian in her arms and jumped aside, but Cassie, unable to stop herself, ended up falling into the water instead. Ellie first asked about Damian's condition. After confirming he was fine, she quickly took his hand and walked away. Only Cassie and her lackeys were left standing there stunned. This was Damian's first time seeing Ellie this angry. Why? Was it because he had caused her trouble? With this thought, he released her hand. But Ellie turned around and asked him why he hadn't resisted. The sadness in Damian's eyes was about to overflow. "So you're really mad at me?" Damian asked desperately. "Did you only take care of me because you pity me?" "If that's the case, then forget it. I'm used to this kind of life." This made Ellie panic, she quickly explained. She didn't think he was weak. On the contrary, she felt he was stronger than anyone else. It was the first time someone had used the word strong to describe her. She had mentally prepared herself. But at that moment, Damian still shed tears. Thankfully, Ellie didn't hate her. All the grievances exploded in an instant. Seeing Damian cry, Ellie panicked and kept explaining over and over. She even made a promise with him, swearing that she would never hate or reject him. Damian truly held Ellie's hand. From now on, he would always hold her hand. When they ate, he would sit next to her. Ellie once again reminded him not to sit idly by when being bullied. He should bravely fight back and not overthink things. On their way back to the orphanage, Damian recalled Ellie's words. "There will always be someone to help you. Please trust her when that time comes." He felt like he was crying but also happy. Maybe this was what happiness felt like. In the dim room, cold bodies lay scattered on the floor. A man was returning his bloody sword to its scabbard. This man was none other than the disgraced Duke, who had been searching for Damian. Due to incorrect information, he had to clean up some trash, and now he would move on to search the next area. The boy had a fever of 49 degrees C, but he insisted he wasn't sick and didn't want to worry the girl. Thinking back to the night before when Damian was almost pushed into the lake by Cassie. Luckily, Ellie had arrived just in time. When they returned, Damian transformed into a pitiful little puppy. Requesting to sleep in the same bed with Ellie, claiming he would have nightmares and couldn't sleep otherwise. Ellie was worried that the bed was too small and that she might crowd Damian, but when she saw the boy's pitiful face, she softened. Looking at the boy beside her, his face radiating happiness. Ellie felt very pleased and teasingly said, "It's like we're siblings lying together." But Damian replied, "I'm not your little brother. You're only 11 and I'm 13. I'm not your little brother." Hearing this, Damian fell silent. Ellie, seeing the boy's displeased face, thought he hated being seen as a child and hurriedly comforted him. "Actually, sleeping with you feels really warm." This made Damian blush instantly. He stammered, "Me too." The two little ones wished each other good night and fell asleep, perhaps with Ellie's company. Damian happily played with Ellie in his dreams. He was sincerely grateful to her. "Having you by my side is really wonderful." But the next day, Damian developed a fever. The thermometer had broken, but the boy stubbornly endured. This made Ellie feel guilty for not taking better care of him. She told Damian to rest well and that she would return to accompany him once she finished her work, although Damian really didn't want Ellie to leave. He could only obediently agree, not wanting to worry her. Ellie cleaned the director's office. She planned to steal some samples when the director was gone and take them back for Damian. But today, the director seemed in a bad mood. Seeing Ellie dawdling, she immediately scolded her and kicked her out. It turned out that the orphanage's finances were in trouble and had been losing money, which put a lot of pressure on her. The director looked at the cabinet where the zero-interest bonds were kept. Was she going to sell these treasures for money? She really couldn't bear to. She turned around and looked at Ellie with a face full of disgust. If Ellie weren't the daughter of a thief, she could sell for a large sum to help pay off the debt. At that moment, a teacher came to report to the director. The Duke of Hughes would visit each aristocratic family that had adopted children to confirm if they were indeed the son of her close friend, Duke Clyde. The aristocrats, afraid of encountering her, dared not come to adopt children. She had followed the director's instructions and spread the news that Duke Clyde's son was here. Soon the Duke of Hughes would arrive, but the teacher was a little scared. What if they were found out? Would the Duke kill them? The director scoffed. The Duke had never seen the child and only knew it was a black-haired boy, so he wouldn't recognize him. At this moment, Ellie, who overheard this conversation, couldn't control her accelerating heartbeat. The man she had been waiting for was finally coming. She was going to save Damian. The man had searched the entire empire to find the son of his deceased friend. He even visited every noble family that had adopted orphans to confirm if they had the black-haired boy. One day, the Duke received a lead and arrived at Damian's former master's house. However, the woman mistook him for a regular rich man who was planning to rob and kill her. It looked like his life was in danger. The woman hurriedly told him that the child he was looking for was currently at the orphanage and that she had received a letter a few days ago. The letter confirmed that the child was indeed at the nearby sacred orphanage, rather than an orphanage. It was essentially a place for trafficking children and conducting dirty deals. The Duke couldn't wait any longer. He immediately set off toward the orphanage, unaware that disaster was about to strike the orphanage director. Upon learning the Duke was coming, the director became anxious because several children were sick. She couldn't let the Duke see the sickly children. With no other choice, the director planned to reluctantly sell a spirit stone. She intended to give it to the children to ease their suffering just for show, but when she opened the cabinet, she was stunned. Some spirit stones were missing. Meanwhile, Ellie was taking care of the feverish Damian. She was about to get some water to wipe the boy's face. Though he was delirious from the fever, Damian still clung to her, not letting her leave. Ellie comforted Damian. She had originally planned to secretly use a spirit stone whose energy might make Damian feel better. But now it seemed it wasn't working, as the boy's red face nuzzled against her. Ellie was suddenly struck with a plan. After a long wait, when Damian finally fell asleep, Ellie seized the opportunity to run out to get water, not noticing the director suddenly appearing behind her. "What are you doing?" the director asked sternly. Ellie instantly put on a smile and responded, "Damian's sick, so I'm taking care of her." To her surprise, the director took the spirit stone from her pocket. "So you stole this for Damian, didn't you?" Ellie, as a person who had transmigrated, was not flustered in the slightest. She pretended to be clueless, awkwardly laughing and saying she had taken it from Cassie. The director was not so easily fooled. "Such shamelessness, no wonder you're the daughter of a thief." These words struck Ellie's sore spot. The director looked pleased with herself and was about to teach Ellie a lesson. But just as she raised her hand to slap, the slap landed on Damian's face. It turned out that at the critical moment, Damian had stepped in front of Ellie. The boy glared at the director. "If you dare hit Ellie, I will not let you go." Because she was the daughter of a thief, the girl was disliked by everyone. Even the orphanage director despised her background. Only Damian saw her as an angel in his life. When the director was beating the girl, Damian stood up to protect her. "If you dare hit Ellie, I will not let you go." The boy's aggressive appearance left the director somewhat at a loss. At this moment, the teacher hurriedly ran over and said, "Duke Schuetz will be arriving soon." The director didn't expect him to be so early and ordered the teacher to immediately take the black-haired, blue-eyed child to the office. After leaving a threatening remark, the director turned and walked away, but Ellie stopped him. "What about Damian? He's also black-haired and blue-eyed. Are you deliberately trying to make me look bad by sending a sickly child to meet the Duke?" Ellie tried to argue, but Damian, exhausted, passed out. The director sneered and left the two behind. Ellie, holding the unconscious boy, made a firm decision. "I will definitely let you meet your family." Meanwhile, the Duke arrived at the orphanage, but only a few teachers were there to greet him. The Duke observed his surroundings. This orphanage was almost isolated from the world, and he sensed that something wasn't right. The Duke directly asked where the children were. The teachers stammered for a while. The Duke decided to go in himself to search. He had just turned the corner when he bumped into a little girl. This girl was Ellie. The Duke crouched down and apologized. His vision met Ellie's clear green eyes. This caused the Duke to pause in surprise. Ellie pretended not to know her identity. She asked if he was there to adopt children and cheerfully told him that there were 5 black-haired, blue-eyed boys in the office. The girl's lively and cheerful demeanor attracted the attention of Entai. There had been someone like her in the past, someone who wasn't afraid of the Duke, but that was a long time ago. Once they arrived at the director's office, the children screamed and cried when they saw the Duke. The director swore that the child the Duke was looking for was definitely here. The Duke took out a power stone containing the child's magic, but the stone showed no response. The director had been lying to him, and the Duke immediately ordered Entai to strike the director. The director, seeing the situation was turning bad, still insisted that the child was among the 4 boys, but the girl had just said there were 5 children. The Duke swiftly moved in, pressing his sword against the director's neck. "Where is the child you've been hiding? If you lie, I'll kill you right here." The man raised his sword to the orphanage director's neck, all because of the girl's words. He was determined to find his long-lost son, and at this moment Ellie felt deeply moved. The Duke was finally going to take Damian away, but after all these days of getting to know him, she felt a little reluctant. She told the feverish boy, "From now on, you won't be sick anymore." The boy didn't understand the meaning of her words until a strange, tall man walked into the room. The Duke's excited appearance surprised Entai. It was the first time he had seen the Duke like this since his wife passed away. The Duke first saw the frail Damian, then noticed Ellie standing next to him. "Isn't this the child I bumped into earlier?" Perhaps because the Duke's gaze was too probing. Damian, struggling to stay upright, stood in front of Ellie, still warning the man despite his shaky body. "If you dare bully Ellie, no matter who you are, I won't let you go." Just then, the power stone suddenly reacted. Powerful spiritual energy surged. The Duke confirmed that he had finally found his friend Clyde's son. At this moment, Damian suddenly fainted. The Duke explained that it was because he was absorbing the stolen spiritual energy. This would help strengthen his body. Ellie touched Damian's forehead, and indeed, Damian had cooled down. The Duke had found the child and was ready to settle accounts. He questioned the teachers about why the child was in such a state. The teachers immediately ran to find the director. Ellie looked at the man, and he really did have the powerful aura described in the book. The Duke watched Ellie, who was busy taking care of the boy, and felt that this girl seemed to know in advance that he was coming. Ellie knew that the Duke was deeply calculating, so she cautiously explained. It's because I had heard from the director before about you looking for the 5 children involved in the illegal plot. You deliberately told me about it, didn't you? Ellie admitted it. The Duke asked her why she didn't just bring Damian to him directly. Ellie had her reasons. She wanted the Duke to first see for himself the harsh environment the children lived in at the orphanage. All the work was done by the children themselves, and the teachers would go to the casino at night, leaving the children uncared for. The girl's determined gaze seemed so familiar to him, causing the Duke to pause in surprise. At that moment, the director was brought in. The Duke went straight to the point and said, I want to adopt this child. Then he looked at the child next to Ellie. I'll adopt this one too. I want her to be my daughter-in-law. The man was adopting children with a buy one, get one free offer. Not only would he take the boy as his son, but he also wanted to take the girl beside him as his daughter-in-law. Ellie was no longer calm. This wasn't like what was written in the original story. Damian's future wife should be the female protagonist, but seeing the boy in his sleep still calling her name. She also realized that she was very reluctant to part with him. The thought of not having to say goodbye made her quite happy. However, the director wasn't willing. If Ellie left with the Duke, she would definitely expose the issue about the children, and then Ellie's life would be in danger. The director directly exposed Ellie's background, saying this brat is the daughter of a notorious thief. Her mother was the thief who stole clothes from Count Ladio's estate. It turned out that Ellie's mother, as a thief, had caused a stir in the past. She had once evaded layers of guards and sneaked into the palace to steal the emperor's treasures but was never caught. It wasn't until later, when she was found in the count's house, that she took her own life. The director exhausted her words in the hope that the Duke would abandon adopting Ellie. But the Duke didn't want to hear any more. When did I ask for your guidance? The man suddenly knelt down on one knee and asked the girl, the choice is yours. Will you come with me? Looking into the man's sincere eyes, Ellie made a condition. Please dismiss all the teachers here, even if you adopt Damian and me. The remaining children will still suffer here. I hope you will punish these irresponsible teachers. Arrange for responsible people to care for these orphans. Don't let these children be treated like commodities to be bought and sold. The Duke agreed to this readily. At this point, the director was completely panicked. She no longer had a chance to speak and was dragged away to be dealt with. The Duke handled things swiftly. Ellie didn't expect him to agree so easily. At this moment, the Duke extended his hand to the girl once again. Will you come with me? Okay, I'm willing. Although she didn't know the reason why the Duke adopted her, Ellie felt very reassured to always be by Damian's side, and she would continue to protect him. Until she met the true female lead after everything had been arranged. Ellie packed her bags and prepared to leave. Looking at the orphanage where she had lived for many years, Ellie sincerely felt happy for the children here. They could finally live a comfortable and peaceful life. The children Ellie had been taking care of came out to see her off, reluctantly bidding her farewell. Seeing the girl's sincere smile, the Duke's doubt disappeared. He had originally thought this child was a spy planted by the Emperor. But seeing how Ellie truly cared for these orphans, the image of that woman resurfaced in his mind, and he felt a sense of déjà vu. At this moment, Damian, who had been hiding behind a tree, was noticed by the Duke. Damian was very wary of this man. Why do you want to take Ellie and me away? What do you want to do with us? The Duke wanted to adopt the boy as his son, but Damian was vehemently against it. This was because in his eyes, all adults were sly and terrifying. He had previously been a slave, a mere plaything for his master. Now he could never let Ellie face the same fate. Damian questioned the Duke, asking why he wanted to take them away. In reality, the Duke wanted Damian to return to his rightful position. As the young master of the Clyde family, he was determined to take back everything that belonged to him. Although Damian appeared to be a fierce little beast now, once he returned to his rightful place, he would be able to protect the people he cared about. Ellie had promised to stay by his side. He would protect Ellie well. Damian threatened the Duke, saying, "You're not allowed to make Ellie do any chores." Absolutely not. The Duke was speechless. What do you take me for? If you dare to bully Ellie, I will never let you off. After delivering his harsh words, Damian turned and left, leaving the Duke seething with anger. This kid was just like his father. He only acted cute in front of those he liked, but in front of others he bared his teeth. How could these two father and son be so similar? The carriage back to the city was moving slowly. The two little ones were leaning against each other, drowsy. Suddenly, a sound outside the carriage window startled Ellie. A group of crows stood with ominous stares on the bare tree branches. The surrounding gloomy and oppressive atmosphere sent chills down his spine. Had the monsters already spread everywhere? A crow was flapping outside the window, its eyes locking with Ellie's. Ellie, frightened, quickly turned her head and refused to look at it. She wasn't sure how long it lasted. The carriage stopped outside a magnificent castle. Ellie couldn't help but exclaim, "It's so wonderful." But then she noticed the crows circling in the air and she froze for a moment. The butler had been waiting for a long time when he learned that the Duke had also brought back the little actress. He found it absurd and couldn't help but sigh. This made Ellie think that she was once again being disliked. She remembered how, when she was first adopted, she had been showered with love. But when they found out she was the daughter of a thief, the disgust on their faces had truly broken her heart. Now she was here only for Damian, and she had become immune to those words. But the butler then changed his tone. "You didn't tell me in advance, so I didn't prepare any maidservants to serve the young lady." This surprised Ellie. She quickly said that she could take care of herself. She didn't want these people to think of her as a burden. This was when Anti told the Duke that Jia Cheng and the other members of the side faction were waiting. It seems that Damian's return has already become common knowledge, although the Duke has adopted Damian now. It was a long time before they truly became close, family-like figures to each other. Before that, those who assisted and guided Damian were the companions along his path of growth. Ellie would absolutely not allow Damian to have any misfortune. When the girl saw her room for the first time, she couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh my God!" The luxurious decor and exquisite arrangements, along with the 10-meter-wide soft bed, all reflected the two words, wealth. Ellie was deeply shocked. She turned around to pull Damian in but saw 4 maids waiting behind her. The head maid, Roina, introduced, "Young Master Damian is with the housekeeper. From today, we are your maids." Ziona, Zioye, and Zio Shah all greeted Ellie gently. Ellie politely bowed and returned the greeting. It was the first time in her life she had been served by so many people, so she felt a little uneasy. The maids, in turn, were charmed by Ellie's cuteness. Everything was ready. Ellie was about to bathe. The thought of her malnourished body being exposed made her a little shy. But she still decided to go ahead with confidence and not let the maids look down on her. Zio Shah asked if Ellie liked any particular kind of scented oil. Ellie had never heard of scented oil for baths. As long as there was hot water, that was enough. After all, the water at the orphanage was always too cold. Upon hearing this, everyone fell silent. Ellie thought she might have said something wrong. The head maid spoke with a hint of sympathy. "We will try our best to find the scented oil you like. Please don't be too polite with us. We will serve you diligently until you become impatient with us." After finishing her bath, Ellie finally lay down on the bed. Although someone helped her bathe, it took more time than if she had done it herself. Feeling refreshed, Ellie rolled around contentedly. But she bumped into Damian, who was sleeping soundly nearby. The boy, with his hair cut short, looked even softer and cuter. Meanwhile, in the meeting room, the family officials of the Hughes family and the Crabs were in a state of panic. They had a lot of objections about Damian's return, originally after the death of Duke Clyde. He had entrusted his trading group to Duke Hughes, and the Hughes family had managed the business for 11 years, making a lot of money. Now to return it all to a mysterious little boy, they were naturally very unwilling, especially the Purple Duke. He absolutely couldn't let the prize slip away. While they were discussing, the Duke arrived. He opened the door and said directly, "I have found Clyde's son." The officials congratulated the Duke but immediately asked, "Does this mean the boy is now the head of Clyde's family?" Of course not. Damian still lacks the ability to control the family. If he returns to his family now, he will surely be eaten alive by those relatives. The Duke changed the subject and said, "This time I also brought back a clever and bright girl. I plan to teach them with all my effort until they are qualified to inherit the Clyde family name." This caused a stir among the officials. Why should they cultivate their future competitors? However, the strong opposition couldn't shake the Duke's resolve. "I have already decided to adopt them, and I will arrange for them to marry." It turns out the Duke had already considered it. In order to seize control of the trading group, these people would stop at nothing. They planned to either drive Damian away or arrange for their own family's girl to marry him, but as long as the Duke arranged Damian's marriage partner properly, then these vassals will never be able to occupy what originally belonged to Damian. The girl told the boy, "We will become a couple in the future." But the boy was confused and didn't understand the meaning of love. Ellie didn't know how to explain either. It's when you see your lover, your heart feels fluttery and your body becomes hot like you have a fever. Her heart also beats faster, Damian suddenly realized. "Is what I feel for Ellie, love." The boy was so nervous that he kept stuttering. He hurriedly avoided the girl's concerned inquiry. Ellie thought that Damian was scared. She pinched the boy's red face. Damian stammered, "I'm just too hot." To her surprise, the girl immediately pulled away. "Then I'll stay further away from you. Anyway, the bed is big enough." Damian instantly felt dejected. No, he didn't want to be separated from Ellie. Seeing the boy's silence, Ellie wondered, "Are you afraid you'll have nightmares again like last time?" Her words hit home for Damian. To comfort his anxious emotions, Ellie gently pulled Damian into her embrace. "This way you won't have nightmares. Close your eyes and sleep well. Good night." Damian in his dream of the vast starry sky. Snuggled up to her and they had a peaceful night's sleep, but there were always dirty ambitions quietly growing in the shadows. The Viscount sent spies to gather information, learning that Ellie's mother was a thief who had stolen the Emperor's treasures. He chuckled. A mysterious little brat and the daughter of a lowly thief, they're truly a perfect match. These two little brats think they can take away what I've worked so hard for all these years. I must get rid of that thief's daughter. A vicious scheme quickly took shape. The next morning, Ellie was woken up and dressed. Today was the day she and Damian would meet with the elders and vassals. Ellie in a pink gown looked even sweeter and cuter. The maids were also conquered by her beauty, but Ellie felt that being served by others was more exhausting than before. She sat on the couch waiting for Damian. At that moment, the Viscount suddenly knocked and entered. Ignoring the maid's objections, he barged in, looking down at Ellie with disdain, his whole demeanor radiating arrogance. Ellie knew the visitor wasn't friendly and put on a smile, greeting him politely. The Viscount said he had come to present Ellie with a treasure as a gift, a rare blue spirit stone, very expensive and hard to find. This was exactly the tool the Viscount planned to use to frame Ellie. Since she's the daughter of a thief, why not let everyone see her stealing? The man smiled on the surface, but in his heart he had evil intentions. Early in the morning, he came to flatter Ellie with a dazzling spirit stone. He had also dismissed the maids, leaving no one else present. The Viscount immediately revealed his true face. "Stop looking, this isn't something you can covet," Ellie said helplessly. "I knew you weren't this kind-hearted, but I'm generous. You want to look? Go ahead and look to your heart's content," she said, handing the stone to the nearby maid. After speaking, the Viscount left on his own, leaving Ellie feeling confused. At this time, the head maid told her it was getting late and they had to leave. Ellie stood up, ready to head out. But the Viscount's maid had a mission. The Viscount had instructed her to find a chance to put the spirit stone into Ellie's pocket. The maid held the stone in her hand. Pretending to sprain her ankle, she accidentally fell toward Ellie. In the chaos, she slipped the stone into Ellie's pocket with a smooth, flawless motion. The head maid was too focused on asking if Ellie had been hurt, and it seemed that Ellie hadn't noticed anything unusual. She walked up to the maid and asked if she was hurt, even helping her brush off the dust from her clothes. After confirming there was no issue, they set off to the meeting hall. Ellie introduced herself to the vassals. "My name is Ellie." However, she was mocked as a common girl without even a surname. Damian was very angry. But he was stopped by the Duke, who told him that it was best to stay quiet and not cause trouble before Ellie had the ability to do so. At that moment, Ziju arrived late. As soon as she entered, she proposed to show the Duke the precious spiritual power stone. The maid, however, whispered something in her ear. "What? The spiritual power stone is missing?" Ziju deliberately raised her voice. Everyone in the room was drawn to the commotion and the maid stammered. Actually, the young lady didn't return it after admiring it. The implication was that Ellie had stolen it. Ziju seemed to have anticipated this and seized the opportunity to reveal Ellie's background. Her mother is a notorious thief. Upon hearing this, the vassals immediately erupted in outrage. They couldn't accept the idea of the daughter of a thief living here. The Duke, however, understood everything. "So you're putting on a show for me." But Ziju pressed on, getting even bolder. She suggested they search Ellie's body for stolen goods. The man, in an attempt to seize a massive fortune, framed the girl, wanting to kick her out of the noble family. He had first instructed the maid to steal the precious gemstone and place it in the girl's pocket. Then, in front of everyone, he accused her of being a thief and insisted on searching her for stolen goods. Ellie trembled with fear. She explained that she hadn't stolen the gemstone, but Ziju insisted on confirming it on the spot. Seeing that her explanation had no effect, Ellie reluctantly agreed but demanded an apology if no gemstone was found. Ziju signaled to the maid to search her. The maid searched Ellie thoroughly, but couldn't find any sign of the gemstone. "It can't be. I clearly put it in there," the maid reluctantly told Ziju. This made the man furious. He personally stepped forward to search but still found no gemstone. The people present began to murmur. They started to doubt whether Ziju's accusation was true or not. The man, enraged, grabbed Ellie and demanded to know where she hid the gemstone. Damian wanted to step in and save her, but Ziju's hand had already been restrained. It was the Duke. "What are you doing? I think you're the one who is the biggest suspect here." The Duke ordered Anti to search Ziju. 1 second, Ziju was confident, but the next, she was shocked. The gemstone was found in her own pocket. Ziju couldn't explain herself and cried out that she was wronged. "What's going on here?" she asked, genuinely confused. But Ellie knew it was all part of his plan. Although the gemstone was very light, Ellie had noticed it when the maid put it in her pocket. After the maid fell, Ellie went to check on her and subtly placed the gemstone back into her pocket. When the maid searched her, Ellie secretly took the gemstone out and placed it into Ziju's pocket when he came to search. Everything about the two fools' actions was expected by Ellie. Trying to frame me? No way, because of this farce. Ziju and the maid faced a brutal end. Ellie didn't want to watch this, but without being ruthless, she couldn't protect herself. Her future would be even more dangerous. The vassals who had mocked Ellie before began to feel some fear. They all knelt down and apologized to her. The Duke temporarily decided not to pursue the matter further. The meeting was about to begin. The Duke had previously mentioned that Ellie and Damian should get married, but the law forbade marriage between nobles and commoners. So in order to raise Ellie's status, the Duke planned to find a family to adopt her as a foster daughter. When these words were spoken, Ellie and her subordinates were all stunned. Which noble would adopt the daughter of a thief? The girl had been despised and insulted by nobles since childhood, bullied because she was the daughter of a lowly thief. Yet now she was being taken home by the most prestigious Duke of the Empire. She was to become his adopted son's fiancée, even going so far as to clean up her background. To wash away her origins, they would make her dance in front of a noble family, giving her a surname, making her a legitimate noble young lady. At this moment, the maid reported that Madame Amanta Nan's condition had suddenly worsened. Upon hearing this, the Duke panicked. He hurriedly excused himself and left. Ellie only felt that the name sounded somewhat familiar. She remembered that the house of Duke Amanta Nan owned a small mine. There was a kind of mineral from that mine that was made into a sword. In the 8 efforts, Damian had used that sword to win the war. In an area ravaged by monsters, weapons were equivalent to money. Ellie decisively chose the house of Duke Amanta Nan. The Duke kindly reminded her that getting Madame Nan to accept her through the trick she just played would not work. Ellie suddenly jolted in shock. Did the Duke realize the tactic she had just used on the Purple Duke? Then why didn't he expose her on the spot? Was it because she had helped him find Damian, someone useful to him? If that's the case, then the Duke was the only person who recognized her abilities. Ellie's face was filled with determination. I will prove my worth. A few days later, Ellie and Damian arrived at the greenhouse garden to play. Damian was immediately drawn to the dandelions. She saw the ground covered with blooming flowers. Eagerly, she called Ellie over. This flower looks just like your hair color. Ellie smiled happily, pointing to the blue flowers beside her. Your eyes are this clear blue color, aren't they beautiful? Damian gazed at Ellie's innocent smile. Ellie told her she would soon be adopted. Damian hastily asked, does that mean I won't see you again? Ellie comforted her, saying that she would only be taking the surname and that they wouldn't be separated. Damian finally relaxed. The boy's sweet smile was so charming, thinking that Damian would start school the next day. The two of them decided to play and have fun today, playing hide-and-seek. The happy moments always seemed so short, and soon it was dusk. After playing joyfully, the two were out of breath, just about to head back. A strange noise came from the small forest, and suddenly a large black shadow appeared in front of them. The two little ones were so absorbed in their game that they lost track of time. At this moment, the strange noise came again from the small forest. If nothing unexpected happened, something unexpected was about to occur. Sure enough, a large black shadow flashed. Ellie tightly protected Damian, but the danger she had imagined did not occur. Instead, a woman was sitting on the ground, shivering, muttering, so scared, so cold. Ellie walked up to her and asked, Grandma, are you okay? Seeing her clothes, Ellie could tell she wasn't just a commoner. She planned to help her back to the greenhouse garden, but when she touched her, she froze. The woman's body was as cold as ice, and her emotions were unstable. Acting rashly would surely cause problems. Ellie enthusiastically introduced herself and asked the woman's name, but the woman was disoriented, unable to recall it for a long time. Ellie suddenly realized, could she be suffering from Roman's disease? Patients with this illness gradually lose their memory, eventually becoming senile, and it's an incurable condition. Ellie took off her scarf and gave it to the woman, telling her there was a warm place nearby full of flowers. The woman became interested. Ellie and Damian helped her back to the greenhouse gardens. The woman's condition seemed to have improved a lot. She had no memory of why she ended up in the woods. Just as she was about to murmur to herself and say her name, an anxious young man approached. Biella, how did you end up here? Do you know how long I've been looking for you? Ellie turned around to see who it was. To her surprise, it was Baron Amanta, so this lady must be the Baroness. Biella called out the Baron's name, apologizing for getting lost. The Baron, though scolding, spoke in a gentle tone. But the next moment, his gaze toward Ellie turned angry and annoyed. Although I don't know what you're scheming, please don't use my wife's illness to manipulate me. Ellie felt a bit wronged by the Baron. This was a misunderstanding. She had only intentionally approached his wife. Damian, who was strong and fit, immediately defended Ellie. Please speak to Ellie more kindly. A kind person wouldn't treat Ellie so harshly. Damian's reaction startled Ellie. She quickly recalled the story of the original world. The Baron would become Damian's teacher, and right now, Damian couldn't be so rude to his future teacher. Ellie hurriedly stopped Damian, telling him not to be so tense. Seeing the young master so obedient to her, the Baron couldn't help but retort sarcastically. This little girl is really good at winning people's hearts, but I'm not falling for it. I will not accept you as an adopted daughter, so please stay away from my wife. After saying that, he supported his wife and walked away, leaving Ellie standing there in disbelief. She didn't expect the Baron to dislike her so much. But it didn't matter if he disliked her. Disliking Damian was a different matter. Ellie tried to persuade Damian not to be so wary of everyone. Damian didn't understand. Didn't you say that we should bravely fight back when others bully us? That person just bullied you, so isn't it the same as bullying me? Did I do something wrong by fighting back? Seeing the boy looking so pitiful and aggrieved, Ellie couldn't bring herself to scold him. Damian had just learned to open his heart. She absolutely couldn't let him shut himself off again, so she switched to praise mode. Damian, you did great. The boy immediately smiled happily. Damian just wasn't good at interacting with others, but with proper guidance, he would be able to differentiate various emotions. To be on the safe side, Ellie still told him, next time we encounter a situation like this, when I stop you, you have to obey and stop right away. Damian was very obedient, and Ellie thought he was even more adorable now. Just then, a maid rushed over in a hurry. The maid loudly called their names. The girl had kindly helped the amnesiac woman. But the woman's husband misunderstood and thought she had other motives. Even the maid advised Ellie to stay away from the Baroness. After all, if she lost her memory, they didn't know what uncontrollable actions she might take. Ellie asked about the reason for the Baroness's illness. It turned out that the Baroness had been fine when she was younger. But after she gave birth to her son, her health began to deteriorate. Ellie felt a little worried, wondering if the illness couldn't be cured. In the evening, the Baron couldn't help but complain again. I arranged so many attendants to follow her, so why did she still wander off and get lost? Looking at his sick wife. The Baron began to feel guilty. I was so hopeful when she was pregnant. But life after the birth of the child has been nothing but painful. This illness is incurable in the Empire. The Baroness's condition grew worse, until one time the Baron found his unconscious wife on the edge of a cliff. She had collapsed. After all, it was the Baron who had initially suggested having a child. But this trapped Biella, who loved freedom more than anyone else. Could it be that she wanted to forget all of this? Looking at her husband, who had a troubled expression, Biella tried to comfort him. Today, luckily, that blonde girl helped me. She gave me a scarf and took me to a warm place. Otherwise, I'd still be out there shivering from the cold. She's really a kind little angel. The genuine smile from his wife stunned the Baron. How long had it been since she had smiled like this? Biella held her husband's hand and wanted to go with her tomorrow to see those two children. Then we could apologize to them, okay? Though the Baron didn't believe that Ellie's kindness was sincere. He couldn't help but feel his heart grow heavier seeing the hopeful expression on his wife's face. After a long silence, he nodded in agreement. Ellie was busy pinching Damian's small face, enjoying the soft, bouncy feel just like cotton candy. Seeing Damian's shy expression, Ellie took his hand and placed it on her face. How about this? The suddenness made Damian's mind go blank. Just then the head maid came in to announce. Baron Amanta and the Baroness have arrived. The two bowed and greeted as they entered. The Baron expressed his deep apologies for misunderstanding the two and made a special visit to apologize. This left Ellie a bit unsure of how to react. Ellie suddenly realized that the reason the Baron had focused so much on the mines after so long was probably because he was only concerned about his wife's health. If she could solve the Baron's concerns, could she make the sword for Damian sooner? Ellie accepted the Baron's apology but also made a request. I've heard that patients with Roman's disease often experience confusion. The louder the surroundings are, the more frightened they become, so Baron, please don't get angry with your wife in the future. The man was willing to come and apologize to the girl just because of his wife's words. Even though this girl was someone he greatly disliked, Ellie accepted the apology. At the same time, she made a request. She wanted to walk with the Baroness. She had just arrived at this place. And her only friend was Damian, but Damian would be busy with his swordsmanship lessons. So she hoped to spend time with the Baroness to relieve her boredom. Meeting 3 times a week would be enough. Ellie made this move to get the Baron to focus more on the mines, hoping to make the sword for Damian sooner. But the Baroness was worried that she might drag Ellie down if she had an episode. However, seeing the girl's sincere request, the Baroness happily agreed. That day, the two had afternoon tea together in the greenhouse garden. Ellie told the Baroness about her journey to the Duke's city. After learning about Ellie's past life, the Baroness felt some pity. She took Ellie's hand. You must have had a hard life before, right? Though Ellie tried to show she didn't care, the gentle care still touched her. She smiled and said it wasn't hard. The children at the orphanage are all good, and the evil teachers have all been dealt with by the Duke. The Baroness was a bit surprised. The Duke isn't one to meddle in other people's affairs, but he rescued Damian from the orphanage. At this moment, the Baroness seemed to hesitate, perhaps out of guilt. She began to tell Ellie the story about the Duke. Duke Schuetz and Damian's father, Duke Clyde, had met during a great war, and from then on they became close friends. The war was victorious, and the Empire successfully subdued the minority clans with magical powers. But on the day Duke Schuetz returned victorious, he brought back a woman named Yulia. It was a family from a minority clan, the Schuetz family. Due to a curse, the family members had been suffering from mania for generations. However, Yulia was able to use her spiritual power to treat the mania. Later, they got married, and their life together was happy and fulfilling. But using spiritual power had its side effects. 3 years later, the Duke had to go to war again. In order to completely eliminate the Duke's curse, Yulia eventually lost her life. After that, Duke Schuetz shut himself off and severed ties with the outside world. Only his friend, Duke Clyde, persistently wrote him letters. 2 years later, Damian was born. Duke Clyde shared the good news with Duke Schuetz, who then regained his spirit and reopened the closed gates. However, on their way to the Duke's castle, Duke Clyde and his wife were assassinated by the Emperor and both passed away. This was when Ellie finally understood why the Duke felt guilty toward Damian. She believed that if she hadn't invited them to come, such a tragedy wouldn't have happened. Ellie understood that feeling because she too had lost close family members. Seeing the silent girl, the Duchess thought she had frightened her. She gently stroked Ellie's hair and changed the topic. Our relationship reminds me of my son. However, he was no longer young and had been busy dealing with matters concerning the mine. As soon as Ellie heard about the mine, she immediately became excited. She asked the Duchess to take her to see the mine. The man frowned as if he could crush a fly with his expression. He had discovered new minerals but didn't know how to develop them. He hated himself for being useless. He couldn't make his sick mother happy, nor could he earn his father's approval. At this moment, the Baron suddenly appeared and asked about the progress of his son's project. His reaction said it all. The Baron initially wanted to comfort him, telling him it was okay and he could take his time. But Jard responded firmly, "I will work harder, I won't embarrass you." His distant attitude surprised the Baron. The comforting words were swallowed back and he turned around only to bump into Ellie. The Baron was surprised to see his wife and Ellie here. Wouldn't she be upset knowing Ellie came to such a dangerous place? He explained that she wanted to come see her son. At this moment, Ellie was already captivated by a short sword. Looking at it sparkling, Ellie wanted to touch it. With eager anticipation, she asked Jard, "Can I?" However, the man directly rejected her. "No, it's dangerous." Ellie instantly felt disappointed. Seeing Ellie's unhappy expression, the man felt a little guilty, but he said, "I can show you something else." The Baron was about to stop him but was stopped by his wife. Jard took out a monocle made from spiritual stones and told Ellie to put it on. To her surprise, as soon as she put it on, Ellie felt dizzy. Closing one eye made it better. The Duchess, watching the two of them happily interact, sighed, "If they had a granddaughter, it must feel like this." At that moment, Ellie saw a pile of blue mineral stones. Jard quickly warned her not to run. Because these special minerals would harden instantly when touched by people and would stick to the body, even releasing strange substances. Ellie was frightened. It was just like the monster Damian had seen before. Once you touched it, you couldn't get rid of it. Upon hearing this, Jard suddenly remembered the monster. He seemed to have encountered it when he was a child. Back then, he was just a little knight. He had seen minerals piled up on the roadside and was about to touch them. But others had told him that these were actually rare mineral monsters, deliberately sparkling to attract attention. Once you touched them, you couldn't shake them off. They could even burrow into the human body. This discovery led to a heated discussion between the Baron and his son. Ellie felt quite pleased that her subtle hints weren't in vain. They finally realized that this mine was actually the lair of a monster. Next, they would research how to use this monster to create weapons. Ellie was lost in thought when the Baroness came to take her back, although she hadn't had much time to talk with her son. Just being able to visit her was enough to satisfy her. The Baroness was very grateful to Ellie. This girl had not only helped her, but also greatly assisted her husband and son. She was like an angel. Because of the girl's humble background, even though the Duke supported her, she was still despised by the nobles. Fortunately, she won the Baroness's favor through her intelligence and resourcefulness. When the butler reported Ellie's situation to the Duke found the girl very clever. At that moment, the butler brought the Baron's latest sword. The material used was actually a type of monster that disguised itself as a mineral. The Duke was very satisfied with this result. But the butler mentioned that this was all thanks to Miss Ellie. It was her subconscious remark that made the Baron realize these stones were actually monsters. This caused the Duke to fall into deep thought when she first brought Ellie back. She suspected that Ellie was an agent of the Emperor, with the intention of winning over Damian to make him loyal to the royal family. If it turned out that Ellie really had ties to the Emperor, she would surely have to take action. But why did her mood worsen just from hypothesizing this? At that moment, the door of the room made a sound. The butler immediately pulled out a dagger and cautiously approached the door. The door opened and it was Ellie. That was a close call. She had only wanted to eavesdrop on the development progress and almost got caught. The Duke asked what was going on. Ellie held out a bag. "I came to bring you some medicine, Duke. I heard from the maid that you often suffer from headaches, so I brought you medicine for headaches." The butler praised her thoughtfulness. "Where did you get this medicine?" Ellie stammered. She couldn't exactly say it was the maid who had given it to her when she pretended to be sick. Ellie quickly changed the subject. "Butler, what's hidden behind you?" The butler swiftly threw the dagger aside, spreading his hands. "There's nothing at all." Ellie was about to hand the medicine to the butler. But the Duke snatched it away. "You came to see me not just for this, right?" "Well, you're too sharp." Ellie went straight to the point. She wanted to choose a family to adopt her. The Duke was puzzled. "The Baron is almost ready to accept you, and now you want to give up?" Ellie had thought the Duke would refuse. But to her surprise, he agreed and even asked which family Ellie wanted to join. The House of Hughes. "I want you to adopt me." She thought to herself that once she grew up, she would leave here, so she just wanted to be taken in for a while. But the Duke decisively refused. "Don't even think about it. I hate troublesome things, especially children." Rejected so bluntly, Ellie had no choice but to return to her room. Looking at the children's medicine Ellie had brought, the Duke couldn't help but laugh. This child actually thinks children's medicine can treat the headache caused by a curse. What is she trying to do? Even though he knew this girl might be an agent of the Emperor, why did he still find himself unable to stop caring about her? The girl, as the fiancée of a noble young master, spent her days thinking about how to escape. Ellie calculated the timeline of the plot. Damian would go to the battlefield in 4 years. The female lead would return 5 years after that. In these 9 years, she needed to plan her own escape, though her plan was to leave. She would continue to nurture Damian. One day, Ellie went to the training ground with the Baroness to visit Damian. Because Ellie helped greatly with the matter at the mine, as a reward, the Baron decided to personally guide Damian in construction. However, Ellie was a bit worried because the Baron had treated her poorly before. Damian harbored some dissatisfaction toward the Baron. To be on the safe side, she decided to communicate with him first. As soon as she opened the door, she saw Damian sitting on the floor. Ellie hurriedly ran over, asking if he was hurt. Ellie held the boy's face, anxiously asking if he was injured. He wasn't hurt, just a bit tired. Upon hearing this, Ellie breathed a sigh of relief and looked up to see the young training companions. "Is your training intensity this high? But Damian is still just a child. Could it be that they look down on him and are bullying him on purpose? I will come often to check on you. If anyone is bullying you, I'll know right away." Perhaps worried about Ellie's concerns, Damian quickly said that he wasn't tired. "Don't you want me to come and see you? How could that be?" Damian instantly became like a wronged kitten, acting coquettishly. "I'm almost exhausted, but when you're with me, I'm not tired at all, so you must come see me." The adorable scene of the two small ones made the Baroness laugh heartily, while the nearby trainees were left in tears. At this moment, the Baron also arrived at the training ground. Because Ellie had helped him a lot, his attitude toward her had become much more polite. He also brought a gift for Ellie, a bow and arrows made from monster ore. It looked quite valuable, but compared to the bow, a sword was more commonly used on the battlefield. "You're right, but our current abilities can't produce swords. If it were Whalebrook, he might be able to." Whalebrook was a master swordsmith from Duke City, but he was an eccentric. He had lost one eye and was about to lose the other, yet he kept refusing medical treatment. Ellie was about to ask more, but suddenly realized it would seem too deliberate to inquire further. After all, the Baron wouldn't divulge any more details. She decided to investigate Whalebrook's situation on her own. Afterward, the Baron and Damian began their training. Ellie was about to leave when Damian followed her. He didn't want to train with the Baron because the Baron had treated Ellie very poorly before. He hated people who were unkind to Ellie. The boy loved the girl deeply. Anyone who spoke ill of her was someone he despised to the utmost. The boy's pure affection moved Ellie deeply, but she also felt a bit helpless. She comforted Damian, saying, "It's okay, the Baron is someone you can trust. He will give you a lot of help." Damian unconditionally believed in Ellie's words. His obedient appearance made Ellie feel so fond of him. She thought about how her background had dragged him into this. The boy had suffered so much because of her. Ellie still felt heartbroken. However, as long as Damian could become stronger and gain the recognition of the Schuetz family through his abilities, others wouldn't dare to bully him openly. Damian and the Baron were fiercely sparring. Suddenly, the butler arrived at the training ground. Today was the young master's first day of training, so he naturally had to come and take a look. To his surprise, the young master was handling things quite well. Ellie showed the butler the gift the Baron had given her. It was a bow and arrows made from the newly discovered monster ore. She intended to show off the Baron's kindness to her. However, the butler's reaction was flat because he had also come to present a gift. Behind him was a bow that Damian had prepared to give Ellie, but the Baron had beaten him to it. At this moment, the duel on the field suddenly paused. It seemed that Damian was at a disadvantage strategically. Ellie originally wanted to step forward to check the situation, but still retreated to her original spot. Because Damian had to grow up, she needed to rely on herself to earn the family's recognition. The Baron didn't expect that what was initially meant to be a friendly sparring session had unintentionally turned serious. Although the young master's swordsmanship was poor, his insight and ability to predict were quite sharp. Despite having trained with the knights for a long time, he still had the stamina to fight with the Baron until now. It was said that he fought monsters when he was a slave. Was it his energy from those times that made him so resilient? Damian made a hunting move and fell to the ground, his muscles cramping from exhaustion. But his unwavering gaze still fixed firmly on the Baron. Although your attack abilities are excellent, your sword still can't protect anyone. Provoked by the Baron's words, Damian trembled as he stood up. His eyes full of fighting spirit expressed his determination, only for the Baron to knock his sword away in the next second. Let's stop here for today, it's time to rest. You are full of weaknesses right now and have no chance of winning. Seeing Damian silently standing there, Ellie clenched her fists in worry. The concern in the girl's eyes was noticed by the Baron, and he finally understood why the Duke had brought Ellie back. The boy had suffered a crushing defeat in his match with the Baron. She was still too weak. Unable to protect the girl she loved, Ellie feared Damian might be discouraged. She wanted to comfort him, but unexpectedly, Damian looked at her with firm eyes and said, "I will work hard to learn swordsmanship. I want to become a strong person." Ellie paused for a moment, then smiled with relief. It turned out that her worries were unnecessary. This boy already had his own goals. Damian said he wanted to get stronger to protect the real people around him. Ellie reminded him, "Then make sure you eat well and don't be picky. Take care of your body and your back muscles should be able to handle 17 opponents." That day, Liang Xiaoji was walking in the snow with Damian, both of them exhaling visible breath. "So cute, let me pinch them," they were about to move forward. But the maid behind them stopped them, as her keen sense of smell detected a nauseating odor. She led Liang Xiaoji to a lake with red water. This place was called the Red Lake. Many people had been drawn to the color and drowned there, and because the lake had magical powers, it couldn't be leveled. "Young master, young miss, you must never come near here." "Did you hear that, Damian? Miss Ellie, you must promise me." Ellie paid it no mind. "I'm not a child." Just then there was a sudden noise from the small wooden house by the lake. Bang, the door was slammed open. A man wearing an eye patch and blood dripping from his mouth suddenly appeared. Ellie instinctively pulled Damian closer and anxiously looked at the man. She was about to ask who he was, but the man grabbed a bottle of alcohol and began drinking heavily. The maid greeted him, "Long time no see, do you still remember me?" The man glanced at the two children. "I think I told you before, bringing children here is dangerous." The maid was about to explain but suddenly covered her nose and mouth. The stench from the man's body was suffocating her. "Sorry, Mr. Whalebrook, we will leave now." "Wait, Whalebrook, that name sounds so familiar. Isn't he the swordmaker the Baron mentioned?" Once they returned to Duke's residence, Ellie eagerly asked the maid, "Is that man the craftsman who makes the swords? Did he stop making swords because he lost his eyesight?" After the maid explained, Ellie understood the situation. It turned out that Whalebrook's daughter had drowned in the Red Lake. However, she hadn't fallen into despair after that. It was after the death of Duchess Yulia that he developed the bad habit of drinking. Duchess Yulia, being about the same age as his daughter, used to chat with him often after her daughter's death, helping him overcome his sorrow. But after Yulia's death, Whalebrook started drinking heavily to numb himself and refused medical treatment. Before leaving, the maid also reminded them not to go near the Red Lake in the next 2 hours. However, Ellie, weighing 60 kilograms but only 59 kilograms in weight after adjustments, didn't intend to obey. "Miss, please don't go near the lake." "Don't worry, I won't." But Ellie wasn't the obedient type. The man today was very important and she had to investigate him. The next morning, Ellie appeared at the lake alone. She happened to see a man coming out of the house. This was the doctor who had come to treat Whalebrook. Ellie was about to ask the doctor about Whalebrook's condition when the conversation of the men froze her in place. The doctor was reporting to a certain Viscount, deceiving Whalebrook by telling him that only one eye was treatable. In fact, he was poisoning him slowly, blinding his other eye, making it impossible for Whalebrook to forge swords capable of withstanding the Duke's aura. When the military power of Shui's weakens further, the entire Duke city will belong to the Quintal family. The man on the other end of the magic orb repeatedly warned the doctor not to let Whalebrook discover the Baron's new plan. The entire conspiracy was overheard by Ellie, who was hiding behind a tree. I can't let them succeed. The man, still holding the alcohol bottle, woke up from a drunken stupor. As soon as he opened the door, he saw a child squatting by the lake. Whalebrook immediately rushed forward and pulled Ellie up. Are you trying to get yourself killed? Do you know how dangerous this place is? His instinctive reaction made him explode in anger. To his surprise, the girl remained calm and greeted him with a bright smile. Whalebrook asked her what she was doing here. Ellie raised the bow and arrow in her hand to show him. This is a gift I received. Isn't it cool? The man's gaze was immediately drawn to the blue arrowhead. He stared at the arrowhead, attracted by the mineral. It was indeed a very effective way to catch his attention. Whalebrook, wanting to study the ore more closely, took Ellie into the house. The place was filled with discarded bottles and a filthy, chaotic environment. Ellie pondered the doctor and his companion's schemes. They want to use Whalebrook's eyes to bring down the Duke. His condition cannot be allowed to worsen any further. At this moment, a bottle of potion on the table caught Ellie's attention. The color is so strange, it looks suspicious. I'll take it back for investigation. Whalebrook was about to open the window for ventilation but saw the girl hesitate slightly. He turned around and lit the stove. Ellie casually chatted with him, advising him to drink less alcohol. Eat properly to stay healthy and face the new life ahead. Whalebrook hadn't heard such words in a long time. He told Ellie that he once had a daughter, but sadly she drowned in the Red Fox River. It was all his fault as a father. He didn't warn his daughter about the danger of the lake, which caused the tragic accident. At this moment, the girl interrupted him, saying that wasn't your fault. Ellie spoke about her mother. If it weren't for her, her mother might not have chosen to become a thief. Ellie had blamed herself for it too. But whenever she did, her mother would tell her it's not your fault. So if your daughter could see you now, she would surely want to tell you, Dad, this wasn't your fault. The man, devastated by the drowning of his daughter, had been unable to forgive himself. It wasn't until the girl's words that this despondent man found hope in life again. It's not your fault. Looking at the young girl before him, the man was reminded of what Madame Yulia had once told him a few years ago. The two of them were so similar. The sky darkened and Ellie was about to leave. She had made an agreement with Whalebrook. She would study the potion overnight and come to find him tomorrow. Ellie returned the bow to him, promising no problem. Where do you live, Duke City? Before the man could react, Ellie quickly slipped away, leaving Whalebrook thinking she was a maid from Duke City. She had prepared to study the arrowhead material thoroughly. Little did she know, she became so absorbed that she stayed up all night until dawn. It was a pity she had to return it so soon. She hadn't figured out the material of this ore yet. Whalebrook hadn't been to Duke City in a long time. He thought in his current state, meeting the Duke would be embarrassing. When she nervously arrived at the Duke's gate, she was stopped by 2 pairs of guards. Her strange attire and the arrow she held made her look suspicious. She was about to explain herself. At this moment, Baroness Vieira arrived. Long time no see, Whalebrook. In the splendid parlor, the Baron and Ellie were waiting for Whalebrook's arrival. Ellie cheerfully called out, "Uncle." Whalebrook was quite surprised by the situation. The Baron was also surprised. "Whalebrook, how did you end up here?" Ellie explained, "This uncle is my friend. He's particularly interested in the arrows you gave me. He also makes weapons, so I wanted to introduce you two to each other for some exchange." The 2 men exchanged puzzled glances. "What a coincidence," the Baron said suspiciously, looking at Ellie. Ellie quickly changed the topic, asking, "How's the research on that arrowhead going?" As soon as the topic switched to weapons, the 2 men immediately focused on the discussion. Ellie smiled proudly, pleased that the plan was going smoothly. Damian thought Ellie was feeling happy after drinking. He kindly pushed his cup towards her. Such a warm-hearted boy, he's simply too cute. The 2 men were discussing how to make swords from the ore. The Baron excitedly invited Whalebrook to collaborate. But upon seeing Whalebrook's blind eyes, the Baron expressed regret. "Your eyes don't look too good. Aren't you still refusing treatment?" Whalebrook was confused. "What are you talking about? I've been receiving treatment all along. Dr. Dillon even gave me a prescription." At this moment, Whalebrook suddenly felt something was off. Today, he had been so busy with research that he forgot to take his medicine. But why did everything seem clearer than usual? Could there be a problem with the medicine? Whalebrook's expression turned serious. "My Lord Baron, I have something to ask of you." This man was being two-faced. Though he said he was most bothered by children, in his heart, he always paid extra attention to girls. Even during meetings, he fiddled with the headache medicine a girl had given him. He was dismissive of his subordinates' reports, his mind filled with thoughts of the girl's innocent smile. The scheming Count Quintal was preparing to make a move. He offered the Duke a newly crafted pair of shears. Right now, monsters were rampant outside and Whalebrook was almost blind, so he could no longer forge swords. Quintal was betting that under pressure, the Duke would inevitably use his family's swords, which would allow him to dominate the weapon manufacturing industry in the Duke's city. But the Duke didn't even give him a glance. He turned to ask Baron Amanta about the progress of the new mineral development. Very smooth, my lord. From what I know, you've only created sword stones, but the knights use swords with sharp blades. Are you planning to use sword stones for hunting? Facing the obvious mockery, the Baron could only swallow his anger. The Duke then turned to ask the doctor about Wibak's condition. Quintal exchanged a meaningful glance with the doctor. The doctor answered he's still the same, unwilling to accept treatment. The Duke thought for a moment. He took the sword from the doctor and carefully examined it, gently stroking the sharp blade. Just as the doctor was feeling overjoyed, a sudden urgent knock on the door sounded. The maid called out loudly that Miss Ellie had dripped the eye medicine he had prescribed and kept shouting. The doctor was baffled. He had never prescribed eye medicine for Ellie. The maid then presented a medicine bottle which shocked him. Wasn't this the medicine he had prescribed for Wibak? It was a poison made from red fox water intended to blind Wibak's other eye. How could it have ended up in that wretched girl's hands? That girl was the future Duchess. If anything happened to her, he was as good as dead. The doctor rushed to check on Ailey's condition. In his panic, he accidentally let slip that it was a harmful poison for the human body. By the time he realized his mistake, it was too late. Wibak, his face dark with fury, blocked his path. Did you just say this is poison? The doctor, being the coward he was, quickly confessed, I was just following orders. It was Count Quintal who had me do it. The Count, stunned by his ally's betrayal, quickly denied everything and tried to disassociate himself, but the doctor pulled out the magical communication sphere they used. The recording of their conversation played out in front of them. The Duke, who had been out of sorts, suddenly came to his senses. He gently stroked the sword's blade, his eyes cold as he looked at Count Quintal. The recording of their conversation was played on sight. The Duke, who had been out of sorts, suddenly regained his composure. He stroked the blade, his eyes cold as he looked at Count Quintal. His pupils turned a bloodthirsty red, as if only blood could calm the madness within him. The man was so scared that he nearly wet himself. This was because a sword was pressed against his neck. The Duke, holding the sword, exuded an aura of bloodlust. Cursed as he was, the Duke needed sword blood to soothe his mania. Seeing the Duke on the verge of losing control, Anti feared he might go on a killing spree and tried to step forward to stop him. At this moment, Wibak interrupted the Duke and presented the sharp sword he had forged. Wibak felt a little anxious, as he hadn't drawn a bow in 10 years. Would the Duke dislike it? To his surprise, the Duke had been waiting for this moment. The Duke, holding the sword, swiftly executed Count Quintal with a single strike. He instructed Wibak to finish making the new weapon as soon as possible. Wibak looked at the Duke, who didn't blame him at all, and immediately pledged to awaken. I won't disappoint you. Anti was very satisfied with the result. Now that blood had been shed, the Duke's mania would soon calm down. However, the bloodlust in the man's aura didn't disappear. The Duke handed the sword to Anti and hurriedly ran out. He suddenly pushed open the door to a room. Ellie saw the Duke and smiled, greeting him. The man quickly moved in front of her and shook her vigorously, asking, I heard you got strange medicine in your eyes. Does it still hurt? Seeing the girl's somewhat guilty expression, the Duke instantly understood. It turned out that everything had been a trap set by Ellie. Ellie also deduced from the Duke's bloodstains that his plan was progressing smoothly. Anti had chased him here, dragging and pulling, trying to get the Duke out. Seeing the girl's bright green eyes still sparkling, the Duke finally felt at ease and left. Anti took out a handkerchief and asked the Duke to wipe off the blood on him. My lord, you really worry me, he couldn't help but complains. The young lady is still just a child. If she sees the blood on you, she might get scared. The Duke then noticed the blood on his hands. At this moment, a maid brought out a medicine bottle. You dropped this earlier. The Duke took the bottle back. He squeezed it in his hand, then asked Anti, do other knights usually carry something like this? Of course not, Anti replied. The Duke immediately ordered him to give each of them a handkerchief so they could wipe the blood off themselves at any time. Suddenly, the Duke imagined that when Ellie used the handkerchief, the rough fabric might have scratched her delicate skin. That wouldn't do. He needed to pick the softest fabric, and it should be embroidered with beautiful patterns. Such a handkerchief would be worthy of Ellie. After giving his orders, the Duke left in a carefree manner, leaving the two of them staring at each other in confusion. My lord, how could this be? Anti thought, even at such a young age, was already jealous. His beloved girl simply glanced at another child and he became flustered and unsure. Whenever someone complimented the girl's beauty, he would glare at them. Ellie's beauty is something you can covet too. That day, the two little ones finally arrived at the market to play. The bustling market quickly caught their attention. In order to prepare for future self-sufficiency, Ellie took this opportunity to conduct some market research in advance. She held Damian's hand and warned him, there are many people here, so don't let go of my hand. Damian, feeling wronged, asked, wouldn't you hold my hand if there weren't so many people? Ellie coquettishly smiled, as long as you're willing, we can hold hands forever. Hearing this, Damian felt reassured. The two of them walked hand in hand, starting their eat and shop mode. Damian accidentally smeared sauce on his face. At this moment, a nearby guard quickly handed him a handkerchief. The large, burly man and the delicate handkerchief seemed completely mismatched. Ellie initially thought it was just a personal preference, but she didn't know this was actually something the Duke had thoughtfully arranged for her. A small bottle caught Ailey's attention. The shopkeeper, seeing Ellie was just a child, was initially unwilling to serve her. But upon noticing the group of people following the girl, the shopkeeper immediately changed his attitude and started to be overly courteous. It turned out this was a medicinal potion with healing properties. Although it was priced expensively, its effectiveness was minimal. Ellie had originally planned to give it to the Duke, but when she thought about his expression the last time she gave him medicine, the Duke would probably not care about this, she thought. At that moment, the maid mentioned a local custom. It was customary for children going out for the first time to buy a gift for their family. Ellie hesitated. Would he like my gift? Passing by a nearby jewelry stall, Ellie noticed a pair of earrings that resembled Damian's eyes. She decided she had to get them. Just then, a family of 3 suddenly squeezed into the small stall, seemingly browsing through the goods. But Ellie immediately noticed the child was stealing something. At first, she didn't want to intervene, but since she was planning to do business here in the future, such shameful acts could not be allowed. She decided to make the earrings a gift for the Duke. She stepped forward and grabbed the child, catching the thief red-handed. The adults accompanying the child initially tried to explain, saying the child was too young to understand, and apologized. But upon seeing the guard's fierce gaze, the man began to distance himself, trying to break his connection with the child, adopting an attitude of dispose of him as you wish, even willing to let the child be enslaved. The child, now panicked, said, "You guys made me steal it. If I did what you told me, you promised to give me the stuff back and buy me some bread." Seeing this, the man shoved the child to the ground. At this point, Ellie couldn't stand it anymore. These people were clearly not the child's real parents. They were using the child to do bad things. The man, whose identity had been exposed, became enraged and even tried to harm Ellie. Everyone quickly helped Ellie up and exchanged furious glares with the man. Now this man was in big trouble. He dared to beat up the Duke's young lady in public. If looks could kill, he would have died 1,000 times by now. There was no way to escape. The child, who had been shoved down, was preparing to leave when Ellie handed him a green bracelet. "Wait a moment here, take this back." It turned out this was an heirloom left to the child by their parents, stolen by the bad people who had coerced the child into stealing. Ellie had returned it to him. The child was deeply moved and vowed to repay Ellie. Upon learning that the child lived in an orphanage with their younger siblings, Ellie bought him a big bag of food. "If you ever need my help, I'll definitely assist you. My name is Grace." Upon hearing this name, Ellie was stunned. Could this be the same Grace from the original story, the knight who risked her life to protect the female protagonist? In the novel, Grace was a girl. However, she was also quite handsome. Seeing Ellie compliment her appearance, Grace became a bit shy. But Damian, who was nearby, looked displeased. "Why are you blushing over this?" Meanwhile, the guards had caught the escaping criminals. The maid, worried about Ellie getting hurt, had also bought some medicine. It was about time to head back. The guards simply picked up the 2 little ones under their arms. Before leaving, Ellie handed the medicine to Grace and bid the future female knight goodbye. "In the future, Damian will be in your care." Inside the Duke's office, the Baron and Wibbeck had successfully made sharp shears from the new mineral, and the Duke was quite satisfied. At this moment, Ellie and Damian returned. Ellie told the Duke about her experiences outside. She also mentioned a gift she had bought, a pair of earrings. Seeing this, the Duke touched his ear, contemplating whether to go get his own pair of earrings. "This is specially bought for you. It matches your eyes perfectly," Damian said. The Duke froze for a moment, his heart wounded by 1,000 cuts. Damian, a bit shy, took out a green gemstone necklace. "I also bought you a gift." Ellie was very happy, exclaiming how in sync they were. She didn't notice the Duke standing nearby with a dark expression. The man silently tightened his grip on the sword hilt. Fearing he might snap, Anti quickly stopped him and then asked, "Aren't you two going to give a gift to the Duke?" "Of course, we prepared something," Ellie said confidently, calling over a guard to report that they had just captured a group of frequent thieves. Ellie explained to the Duke that she didn't know what he liked, so she prepared this surprise as a way of helping ease his burdens. Everyone present looked at the Duke, and the Baron and Wibbeck exchanged glances, both showing a hint of pity for him. Wasn't it supposed to be a gift? But this clearly just adds to the workload. How hard is it to get a simple little present? Ellie and Damian were walking together, Damian wiping his hair as he said he had a great time with Ellie that day. What surprised him even more was receiving Ellie's first gift, but there was a small complaint: he didn't like being called cute, he preferred being described as handsome. Just like the child they met today, Ellie realized that Damian must have been upset about her compliment to Grace earlier. This boy has already started caring about his appearance, Ellie thought, quickly explaining, "I still prefer cute types and you're both cute and handsome." After a day out, Ellie was a little tired. Damian asked if her injuries still hurt. Actually, I was just pretending, she replied. Ellie had told Damian before in the orphanage that lying was much better than bearing it foolishly. She had pretended to be seriously hurt to capture those bad guys. This is a kind lie, so Damian, if there's something you really want, don't hesitate to find a way to get it. You can't do anything unethical, but if you want it, you can have it all. Even though Damian might still face harm from supporting characters, no matter what, Ellie would always help him. What Damian wanted most was to be with Ellie forever, to change his tragic fate as a cannon fodder. The girl, acting as a protector, safeguarded the boy's well-being, and unexpectedly the Duke's foster father took her home. She became the boy's young fiancée, but the girl planned to eventually step back from the engagement and regain her freedom. However, the boy gradually became attached to her under her care and wanted to be with her forever. Ellie was practicing archery while the Baroness praised her repeatedly, saying, "Miss, you are truly outstanding." Ellie admitted she hadn't expected the Baron to give her such a generous reward. The Baroness said, "Ellie, you're too polite. We will be a family soon. What's a gift between family?" Ellie froze for a moment and then fell into deep thought. Though she longed to have a family like Ellie's, she recalled the painful experiences of being abandoned so many times before. The greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. When they said they would become a family, it was probably because they saw her as someone useful to them. Ellie expressed that she would work even harder to not disappoint the Baron's family. But the lady told Ellie that family relationships are not formed for profit, but rather to cherish and love each other, and that is the most important thing. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. Ellie had never heard such warm words before. This was the Baron's son, Jarrett, who happened to feel that Ellie really liked the bow and arrow. She was very pleased. After all, she had carefully made this set of bow and arrows for Ellie and had eagerly taught her how to shoot. This was Ellie asking Jarrett about Wibback's work on the sharp arrows. It was true that they were in production, but there were thousands of arrows to be made. The only person forging the arrows was herself, so the progress was quite slow. Ellie was a little anxious. If things went on like this, Wibback would wear her out before the arrows were even done. While lost in thought, Ellie's hand shook, causing her to miss the shot. She quickly ran into the woods. But when she looked up, she saw crows swirling in the sky. Ellie became a bit nervous. After all, just looking at them was eerie. To her surprise, one crow landed on the ground and stared at Ellie. The way it stared at her was even more terrifying. Ellie hugged the arrows, trembling, planning to wait for the right moment to run away. Unexpectedly, the next moment, the crow transformed into a man. This was ridiculous. What the hell? It was beyond belief. "Kid, are you close with that hammer-wielding man? I heard his eyes were healed by you." As the man spoke, several more crow people landed. "Are you talking about Wibback? So aggressive, could he be Wibback's enemy?" But to Ailey's surprise, the man stepped forward and took her hand. "So you are the benefactor of our teacher." Ailey was a bit stunned. She hadn't fully processed what the man had just said. However, she noticed that the man had touched an arrow made of monster ore and it was perfectly fine. Ailey gave a determined smile as she thought of a good idea. The girl was now quite flustered, because she had seen the crow turn into a man, but then the girl suddenly gave a sly smile. She thought to herself that these people had arrived just in time and could help her with a big task. At this moment, young Master Jarrett arrived and, seeing the unfamiliar man, quickly stepped in front of Ailey. He warned them to stay away from Ailey. The crow people explained that they had no ill intentions toward Ailey and only approached her to repay a favor. After all, they were only interested in her exceptional sword forging skills, because their race's mission was to craft the most powerful weapons in the world. Ailey remembered reading in a book that the royal family possessed a sword capable of removing evil forces, and it was made by a mysterious clan. Could these crow people be from that clan? The crow people explained that ever since their clan leader passed away, their ability to forge weapons had declined. During their period of uncertainty, they happened to see the swords made by Wibback and were immediately impressed by his skill. From then on, they regarded him as their teacher. But one day, unexpectedly, Wibback had abandoned sword forging, which saddened them deeply. Fortunately, Ailey helped him regain his sight, allowing him to forge swords again. To the crow people, Ailey was their benefactor. However, Ailey didn't expect that Wibback didn't even know them. Calling him teacher was purely their one-sided wish. At this point, Jarrett interrupted their conversation. "Miss Ailey, can you understand what they're saying?" What? Ailey was confused. Did she really understand what the crow people were saying and no one else could? The crow people explained that if someone could communicate with non-human races, it meant that person had blood from that mysterious clan. Ailey was puzzled. She was just a small supporting character, so logically she shouldn't have this ability. Although the corvid people couldn't speak human language, fortunately they could understand it. Ailey led them to Wibback's small cottage. Enthusiastically introducing them, Ailey said, "This is Talim, and he wants to become your student to learn sword assistance." The corvids immediately crowded around Wibek, surrounding him. Wibek had a skeptical expression on his face. Talim was ready to show off his abilities. He picked up some monster ore from the nearby pile and brought it in front of Ellie. We can make weapons even more powerful than the arrows in your hand. The corvids could actually transform into humans. Not only could they resist the damage from monster ore, but they also possessed superb weapon-making skills. To gain Wibek's approval and become his student, the corvids quickly forged arrows from monster ore at an astonishing speed. And they were even lighter in weight. Wibek was stunned. To create such high-quality weapons in such a short time, even Jard was shocked. Could they be the mysterious clan that crafted the holy sword long ago? Yes, that's us. Wibek and Jard exchanged a glance, and both had the same thought. They asked Ellie to inquire whether the corvids would be willing to work for them and craft weapons. Once the corvids helped, the task of making thousands of weapons would be quickly completed. Ellie secretly rejoiced. Everything was going according to plan. However, they couldn't let them off so easily. The corvids asked Ellie if Wibek had recognized their abilities. Ellie wore a mischievous smile. Of course, he recognizes you, but there's one last test. She made the corvids put on a look of unwillingness to compromise. After all, Ellie was the only one who could communicate with the corvids. If they wanted her help, they'd have to offer something in return. By evening, the Baroness and Jard were on their way home. Jard was excited as he thought about how much faster the fleet's progress would be. He couldn't wait to share the good news with the Baroness. It's all thanks to Miss Ellie. Since she came, she's helped us solve so many problems. So she suggested that Ellie should receive business education. She would definitely become an outstanding entrepreneur. Unfortunately, she still carried the stigma of being a thief's daughter. People would always treat her differently. Jard wanted to tell the Baroness about Ellie's extraordinary abilities. But his mother immediately stopped him. Those who possess such power have bloodlines from rare families. However, these families were wiped out in wars. That means only the royal family could have such powers. Jard was shocked. The Baroness said that Ellie's mother had stolen something from the royal treasures. What if that item wasn't just treasure but the Emperor's child? If news of Ellie's special abilities were exposed, she could very well be killed. She instructed Jard to keep this matter confidential because the events of the day had made Ellie too excited. So that night she ended up suffering from insomnia. Every time she thought about being involved in business, Ellie became incredibly excited. Looking at the peacefully sleeping Damian in her arms, Ellie couldn't bear to disturb her. She quietly got out of bed, wanting to clear her mind. The night breeze had a slight chill. Ellie walked alone into the garden, but to her surprise, the Duke and Auntie were also there. Just as Ellie was about to approach, she saw Auntie suddenly raise his sword and strike at the Duke. Ellie watched in horror as the Duke was injured and began bleeding. She was frozen in place, shocked to see the Empire's most powerful Duke being stabbed by his own deputy. Ellie rushed forward, asking Auntie why he attacked the Duke. Auntie, not expecting Ellie to be here, hurriedly explained that they were training. You're lying without even blinking. Do you take me for a 3-year-old? Ellie spread her arms, standing in front of the Duke, but Auntie informed her that the true danger was the Duke behind her. Ellie slowly turned her head and saw the Duke emanating a dark, terrifying aura. His blood-red eyes were coldly staring at her. Could it be that the Duke's mania had relapsed again? Seeing the Duke's many wounds, it seemed that only bloodshed could cure his mania. Ellie cautiously reached out and held the Duke's hand. After a short while, the Duke's condition returned to normal. He asked Ellie, "Aren't you afraid?" Ellie shook her head. "If you had already lost your mind and wanted to kill me, you would have definitely harmed others first." Due to the curse, the Duke's wounds healed very quickly. She saw Ellie's calm demeanor and wondered if she had already become accustomed to such scenes. Ellie realized her reaction had been far too mature for her age. She quickly made up an excuse to cover it up. The Duke didn't probe further and simply told Ellie to forget what she had seen tonight. "But what about you, Duke? Aren't you going to sleep?" The Duke sighed helplessly. "I always have nightmares and can't sleep well." "Do you need me to help you sleep?" The girl's words left the Duke a bit confused. Ellie explained that when she was in the orphanage, the children would hold her hand, and she wouldn't have nightmares. So she thought that if she stayed with the Duke, he wouldn't be troubled by nightmares either. Ellie didn't expect much, but to her surprise, the Duke actually brought her back to his room. The Duke asked how she planned to help him sleep, his tone very matter-of-fact as if he were a large cat. Ellie told the Duke to lie down, pulled the blanket up, and carefully covered him, saying that leaving his chest exposed would make him catch a cold. "Only warmth can bring on sleepiness," the Duke complained. Still, he allowed Ellie to wrap him up like a dumpling. The Duke asked Ellie if she always helped others sleep and whether she didn't have nightmares herself. "I always sleep well because real life is scarier than any nightmare," she said, speaking words that were oddly mature for her age. Ellie explained that she meant in real life, one has to do a lot of work and eat unpleasant food with no other intentions. Unexpectedly, the Duke suddenly brought up Ellie's mother. Every time he saw Ellie, the Duke was reminded of that familiar voice. May I ask what your mother's name is? The man, the most powerful Duke in the Empire, seemed to need a little girl to help him sleep. Ellie was about to sing a lullaby when the Duke suddenly asked her mother's name. Ellie grew tense, as her mother's background as a thief had always been a thorn in her heart. Despite this, Ellie told the Duke, "My mother's name is Zainong." The Duke seemed somewhat disappointed, realizing that he had overthought things. In the course of their conversation, the Duke mentioned that he was feeling a little sleepy. Ellie was very happy to see that her sleep-helping method had worked. "It must be because my body feels that sleeping is better than talking with you." The Duke's sharp tongue showed no mercy. Yet in the next moment, he apologized to Ellie. "Sorry for letting you see such a terrifying scene today. And for the suspicions I've had about you." Ellie felt a little touched. But she didn't quite understand what the Duke had been suspicious of. Just as she was about to ask, she noticed the Duke had already fallen asleep. Ellie, with a bit of courage, gently poked the Duke's forehead and quietly left the room. "I wish you sweet dreams. Today, the priests from the temple are visiting the orphanage to offer blessings." "I wish you sweet dreams. Today, the priests from the temple are visiting the orphanage to offer blessings." Grace was really looking forward to this time because the priests would also bring many relief goods. This meant that the children would get a good meal today. At this moment, Grace saw a priest with green eyes. Could it be Ellie? Grace excitedly ran over. But when she got closer, she saw a completely unfamiliar face. She quickly apologized and explained that she had mistaken the person. She explained that her friend also had a pair of beautiful green eyes. The priest with green eyes immediately grabbed Grace's hand after hearing her words. She eagerly asked about Ellie. When the sun began to set and the priests finished their duties and prepared to return to the temple, Aubrey finally revealed her true nature. She disgustedly wiped her hand, clearly repulsed by the touch from the orphans. That was so filthy. She hadn't expected to see a child with green eyes in the territory of Z's. This gave her a strong sense of crisis. At that moment, another priest noticed that Aubrey's eyes, which had been green, were gradually turning orange. Was it because of the sunset's light? Hearing this, Aubrey immediately panicked. She blocked her eyes and explained, "It must be because I'm too tired today." Once back in her room, she hurriedly drank a bottle of magic potion to restore her eye color to green. "That was close. I almost gave myself away." At that moment, her father contacted her through the magic sphere to ask how things were progressing. Aubrey was about to tell him the clues she had gathered about the Duke of Z's. But her father suddenly mentioned that the Duke had found his friend's child and adopted him. He angrily scolded Aubrey for being a useless fool, unable to even find a way to get close to the Duke. If she had done so, she would have already secured the position of Duchess. It turned out that her father had always pinned his hopes on the Duke's title and wealth, deliberately sending his daughter to approach him. Though this was her father's plan, Aubrey was willing because she had fallen in love with the Duke after he had once saved her. To get closer to the Duke, she used a magic potion to change her appearance to resemble the late Duchess. As long as she could stay by the Duke's side, even if it meant marrying his adopted son, she would be willing. Therefore, her primary goal now was Ellie. She had to take Ellie's place, although Ellie was an orphan. She had received the Duke's endless affection. Not only did he personally carry her, he even lovingly fed her food. Just now, Ellie had shown off her archery skills in front of the sycophants. "Miss Ellie is truly amazing. She hit the target with one arrow." The sycophants praised her. Ellie was pleased and demonstrated her special archery skills with a proud smile. The Duke had been watching this all along. He put down his work and went to the garden. Just as he arrived, he saw a guard holding Ellie under his arm, preparing to leave. Ellie greeted the Duke and explained that she was a bit tired and wanted to rest. The Duke paused for a moment and asked the guard, "Do you have 3 sons?" "Yes, my lord. No wonder you don't know how to hold a child." The Duke then picked Ellie up and demonstrated the correct way to hold a child. The onlookers were stunned. The Duke is actually holding a child himself. At that moment, Ellie proudly showed the Duke the bow the Baron had given her, saying it was really easy to use. To her surprise, the Duke, feeling a little hurt, responded, "So only the one given by others is good. The one I gave you isn't good enough." Ellie quickly reassured the Duke, saying that she still liked the bow he had given her the most. The Duke immediately smiled, praising her good taste. Then, holding Ellie, he rushed to the dining room, saying she was too thin and needed to eat more. After a hearty lunch, Ellie was stuffed like a ball. To help with digestion, she took the Duke to the training ground. The Duke thought she was going to learn swordsmanship, but the next second, Damian ran over. Seeing Ellie, she was super excited to join her for lunch. "Sorry, I've already eaten." Damian instantly felt dejected. "Who did you eat with?" The Duke, standing by, sensed a strange surge of anger. "Heh, does this kid still think of me as a rival? But right now you're still too weak." Damian felt extremely wronged, thinking Ellie would never eat with her again. Ellie gently patted her head. "How could that be? Of course I'll eat with you." At that moment, the Duke suddenly leaned in. "Then let the 3 of us eat together from now on." Ellie was very happy. This was a great chance for Damian to bond with the Duke. Damian was unwilling but reluctantly agreed. When dinner time arrived, both Damian and the Duke eagerly served food to Ellie. "This is so delicious, try it." "This tastes pretty good, I'll have one more," the Duke said, eagerly waiting for her evaluation. Ellie, who had already eaten 10 plates of snacks, just wanted to escape. Was it too late to regret now? Everyone could tell the Duke was very fond of the girl. But the girl herself didn't think so. How could that be? She's just playing with me, having fun. That day, Ellie was learning to weave knots with the Baroness. The Baroness suggested that Ellie weave one to give to the Duke. But Ellie felt a bit disheartened. When she gave him a gift last time, he didn't seem very happy. "He must think my gift is beneath him. This knot has a special meaning and carries your heartfelt sincerity. The Duke will definitely like it." Ellie hesitated, holding the knot, "But it looks so ugly, is it really okay?" At that moment, Auntie told Ellie that the Duke was going on a territory inspection and wouldn't return for several days. The Duke, with a stern face, reminded Ellie, "Don't cause trouble while I'm gone." Ellie, with a defiant expression, replied, "I won't cause trouble. After all, the Baron and his wife and Jarek are here." The Duke, upon hearing this, was somewhat displeased. "Have you already started considering them as family?" He frowned, preparing to leave. Ellie quickly took out the knot she had woven. "Duke, this is for you. I made it myself. It might not look good, but I heard it can bring safety. If you don't like it, it's okay." Before Ellie could finish, the Duke snatched the knot from her hand and quickly tied it around himself. "This knot looks so ugly, I'll wear it forever to mock you." Ellie was instantly speechless. The next moment, the Duke's large hand gently touched her hair. "I'm kidding, the knot is very pretty, thank you." Before leaving, he reminded Ellie to take care of herself. Ellie was very happy. This was the first time the Duke had complimented her. A few days later, Ellie and Damian were testing the newly forged weapons. Whalebrook and Talum came to greet them. Talum immediately noticed that Damian seemed very interested in this child. He asked Ellie for Damian's name, and upon learning he was only 12 years old, Talum couldn't help but praise him. At that moment, Ellie suddenly invited them to the market, but Talum declined, saying he was busy making weapons. Suddenly, he leaned in close to Damian, staring at the boy with interest. Damian felt a chill as he was being stared at, unsure of what Talum was planning. Soon, they arrived at the bustling market after 2 hours. They were eating while strolling around, looking at everything. Suddenly, Ellie seemed to feel a hostile gaze. This made Ellie feel uneasy. He grabbed Damian's hand, preparing to head back to the carriage. But suddenly, a rot and foul smell wafted through the air. Immediately after, Ellie's hand was grabbed by someone. He was forcibly taken away from Damian. In the crowded street, Damian hurriedly called out for Ellie. Unfortunately, the two children were too weak. In the crowded crowd, they gradually disappeared from each other's sight. A kidnapping occurred in the busy street. Watching Ellie being forcibly dragged away, Damian was frantic with worry. At that moment, a maid arrived just in time and subdued the kidnapper. "Miss, are you all right?" Damian rushed over, asking Ellie if she was injured. Ellie smiled, saying she was fine. But she accidentally revealed the wound on her wrist. Damian immediately felt a great deal of pain for her. At this moment, the kidnapper suddenly begged for mercy, saying he had been too eager to find his daughter. Seeing the blonde, closed-eyed girl, he mistook her for his long-lost daughter. Everyone present was shocked, looking at the man with the same blonde, closed eyes. Ellie was a little unsure. Could this man really be her father? Then why did he only show up now? A priest arrived on the scene, looking like he was familiar with the blonde man. Grace quickly followed behind. When they saw Ellie, both sides were surprised. It turned out this priest was Aubrey. He explained that he and Grace had been helping the homeless in the streets when the man said he had found his daughter and hurriedly ran off. Jarrett thought the man was acting strangely. Without presenting any evidence, he wanted to take Ellie away, which didn't make sense. Aubrey defended the man, saying he was simply desperate to find his daughter and had done nothing wrong. Moreover, there was no evidence to deny that they weren't father and daughter. "Why should you be the one to judge this matter?" Damian, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. He glared coldly at Aubrey. "The one who was injured is Ellie. Whether there was any wrongdoing can only be decided by him, not you." Aubrey still wanted to explain something. Damian didn't give him the chance. "Aren't you a priest? Then treat Ellie's wound first." Seeing Damian's imposing presence, Ellie felt reassured. Thanks to Damian, she was able to calm down. She couldn't let the suddenly appearing man influence her emotions. She had to focus on her strengths and think carefully. At this moment, Ellie suddenly felt the pain from her wound. She wanted Aubrey to use his holy power to heal her. After all, holy power could heal wounds instantly, but Aubrey refused, saying that he couldn't use his holy power at will. "However, I can use holy water to heal your wound." Ellie felt somewhat disappointed. These priests were so diligent when treating other nobles, but when it came to her, they treated her differently. Just as the holy water was about to touch Ellie, Damian suddenly waved his hand and knocked the bottle over. He shielded Ellie behind him and coldly questioned Aubrey, "Are you really a priest? Why do you reek of a foul odor? Dear girl, you're injured, yet the boy deliberately knocked over the holy water meant for treatment. This was because she sensed the disgusting foul smell emanating from the priest, suspecting that the holy water might be problematic. In the face of Damian's questioning, Aubrey and Liu Jabe wondered if he had sensed something. Suddenly, he felt that the boy's blue cloak looked familiar and suddenly remembered the black market where he had bought magical potions. A dirty little boy was locked in the cage, his blue eyes filled with hostility staring at her. It was the same hostile gaze that had been directed at her before her former experimental subject, who had been injected with drugs. Turns out he was the son of Duke Schuetz. No wonder he could sense that something was wrong with the holy water. But he had no evidence, so what could he do to me? Just then, Grace rushed forward to scold Damian for being so rude. Father Obley is our benefactor from the orphanage, but only Ellie knew that Damian must have discovered something. However, Father Obley was a priest, and the temple was under the Emperor's authority. Ellie feared that any conflict with Obley could be detrimental to Damian. She just didn't understand Father Obley's motives and what exactly was wrong with that bottle of holy water. At this moment, the man cried out again. His instinct told him that Ellie was his biological daughter. The maid, furious, was about to strike him. You say Ellie is your daughter? Then tell me, what's your wife's name and where did you meet her? But the man was clueless. He said his wife never told him her real name. Ellie understood his explanation. After all, her mother was a master thief, and she would never reveal her true name to anyone. At this moment, Father Obley suggested. As a representative of the divine, he could use the holy water to confirm the blood relation. By adding their blood into the holy water, they could determine whether they were biological mother and daughter. In order to convince Ellie to agree to the paternity test, Father Obley began to persuade her fervently. He even brought up Duke Schuetz, saying that the Duke would surely want to see mother and daughter reunited. But Ellie quickly caught a flaw in his words. How did this priest know she lived in the Duke's city? They had come here in Jarrett's carriage today and hadn't revealed their identities along the way. This priest clearly had ulterior motives. To investigate the reason, Ellie feigned a worried expression. She said that since the priest had stopped holding purification ceremonies in the Duke's city, the Duke's condition had worsened, so she implored Father Obley to give her some holy water. This would allow her to repay the Duke's kindness and help alleviate his condition. The people present were all moved by Ailey's filial piety. Ellie looked at Father Obley with expectant eyes. Obley was so angry that he ground his teeth, but he didn't dare lash out. He originally intended to manipulate Ellie. But he didn't expect Ellie to take control of the situation. The girl had just gone for a walk in the market. And now she had encountered a man who claimed to be her biological father and a priest who was approaching her with bad intentions. They agreed to meet 4 days later at the Duke's residence for the paternity test. The maids felt guilty, thinking that their negligence had caused Ellie to get hurt. But how could Ellie blame them, even though she expressed that it was just an accident? The maids still felt guilty. Ellie felt a bit confused. Whether it was the maids or the Baron family, everyone seemed to care about her. But she was just the daughter of a thief who had ended up in the Duke's household by mistake and taken the place of the original lady. She would leave eventually, so why were these people treating her so kindly? But now was not the time to be sentimental. She told the head maid about her encounter with her biological father today. The head maid was flustered, as neither the Duke nor the Baron was in charge. There was no one to make a decision, and since the Duke had adopted Ellie without signing any formal documents, Ellie was still in a situation without a guardian. The priest suggested a kinship test, and they had no reason to refuse. She sent someone to inform the Duke and told Ellie to rest well. After everyone left, Ellie comforted the silent Damian, who had been quiet for a long time. She asked if he was scared by what had happened today, but Damian suddenly apologized. He blamed himself for the danger Ellie faced, saying that it was because he had let go of her hand at the crucial moment. The boy's guilty expression made Ellie feel heartbroken. She repeatedly explained that it was just an accident and hoped Damian wouldn't blame himself, or it would make everyone who loved her sad. Besides, the one who should apologize the most was Ellie herself. It was her sudden appearance that caused the plot to deviate from its original course. No matter what, she would solve this problem. Ellie asked Damian to bring her some hot cocoa. Meanwhile, she secretly wrote a letter. She was curious about how a small priest knew her identity, and how much the temple and even the royal palace knew about her. Rather than wait passively, it would be better to take the initiative. Ellie modified the family crest on the envelope and turned the letter into a bait. Damian brought her the hot cocoa. The two little ones shared the sweet drink. In the blink of an eye, 4 days had passed. Looking at the magnificent and grandiose restoration of the palace, Aubrey couldn't hide her excitement and greed. Soon, everything here would belong to her. Season 1 * complete. A woman covered her face with a veil and contacted the priests in the temple through a magic ball. She told them that someone had stolen the holy water from the temple. At first, they were confused. Suddenly, the priest guarding the holy water received a letter of accusation, and they learned that the holy water had indeed been stolen. The woman told them that the thief was with her and urged them to hurry. After completing all of this, Ellie removed her veil. This welcome gift should be sincere enough, right? Will it surprise Aubrey the priest? Outside the Duke's residence, Aubrey was speaking to the blonde man. She instructed him to continue pretending to be Ellie's father as before. Once the plan succeeded, he could get as much money as he wanted. It turned out that the man was just a street thug Aubrey had hired to carry out her scheme. At this moment, Ellie and Damian arrived at the Duke's residence. Aubrey first asked Ellie if her injury had healed and then greeted Damian, but Damian completely ignored her. After exchanging pleasantries, they entered the reception room. Aubrey seemed stunned when she learned that the Duke was not home. She smiled on the surface but was actually very annoyed. She had used black magic and gone to great lengths to get the real holy water, only to find out the Duke wasn't even there. However, this wasn't entirely bad. If the Duke wasn't there, it would be easier for her to get rid of Ellie. Aubrey wandered around the luxurious reception room, showing no restraint or politeness, completely acting as though she were the mistress of the Duke's residence. The head maid couldn't help but mutter to herself, wondering how this priest could act as if she were the lady of the house. At this moment, Aubrey suggested doing a kinship test on Ellie. Ellie looked a little nervous and wanted Aubrey to hug her to ease her anxiety. After a brief hug, Aubrey pushed aside Ellie's arm, letting blood drip into the holy water. The entire bottle of holy water instantly turned red, and then it was the turn of the blonde man. As long as his blood dripped into the holy water and turned the same color, it would prove that they were biological father and daughter, but Aubrey had already tampered with it. No matter whose blood was added, it would turn the same color. Aubrey's smug smile almost froze just as the man's blood was about to drip in. Suddenly, Ellie accidentally knocked over the holy water. The unexpected turn of events made Aubrey instantly lose her composure. Seeing her scheme about to succeed, it was ruined by Ellie. "Do you know how much effort I put into this? Kids are really annoying." The people present were surprised. Seeing everyone staring at her, Aubrey realized the situation and quickly explained that she had just gotten a little too emotional. "Since the holy water was spilled, we'll have to wait until next time for the test." At this moment, Ellie suddenly mentioned the previous time when Aubrey used holy water to treat the Duke, but Aubrey said that she didn't bring extra holy water today. "But you clearly have another bottle in your robe." Ellie's words immediately made Aubrey wary. How did she know? Could it be because of the hug earlier? At this point, Ellie leaned in and whispered into her ear. "I never said I lived in the Duke's mansion, yet you found it here so quickly. How did you know?" The special priest tried to create a false impression to replace the girl's noble position and frame her. Fortunately, Ellie noticed Aubrey's strange behavior in time. The timing of this person's appearance was too coincidental. The most crucial point was that Damian smelled a foul odor on her. How could an angelic priest have such a stench? The answer was simple: this person wasn't a priest at all. Aubrey never expected Ellie to discover it so quickly and find the hidden holy water. Just as she was thinking about how to cover it up, a servant came in to report that another priest had arrived. Aubrey immediately sensed something was wrong. The priest seemed extremely urgent. "We received a tip-off that a priest stole holy water, so we rushed over." As soon as the priest entered, he walked directly to Aubrey, demanding that she hand over the holy water. Aubrey clutched the holy water in her arms and backed away. If she was discovered, it would be over for her. She noticed Ellie's probing gaze and immediately shifted the focus to Ellie. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and now this little brat had ruined it. Aubrey grabbed Ellie's arm tightly. "You did this on purpose, didn't you? You wicked, rotten little girl." Suddenly, she activated dark magic, threatening that if she couldn't see Duke Schuetz, she would drag everyone to hell with her. Everyone present was stunned by the sudden change. Even the priests had no way to deal with her. Only Damian rushed forward to stand in front of Ellie. At this point, Aubrey had turned sinister and terrifying. "So you treat this brat as your new master now? Too bad you're no longer needed. Time to die." A powerful dark magic erupted. Just as it seemed like the two little ones were in danger, a tall figure suddenly blocked the attack for them. It was the Duke. Aubrey was also pinned to the ground by the arriving guards. She struggled trying to explain herself, but Anti had found the bottle of holy water on her. The priest immediately recognized that this was the bottle of holy water that had been lost by the temple. "Now explain, what do you plan to do to my child?" The blonde man, questioned by the Duke, was so nervous he stuttered, saying that Ellie was his long-lost daughter. The Duke sneered if she really is Ellie's father. "Why did you just stand idly by when Ellie was attacked by dark magic?" The Duke turned to Ellie. "Do you think he's really your father? I mean, do you want to go with him?" Honestly, Ellie just wanted to stay here, but could she even choose? She was just the daughter of a thief, sometimes even despising herself. "If you want to stay, stay." After all, blood relations aren't the only thing that makes someone family. The Duke's words made Ellie feel conflicted. With nothing to offer, do I really have the right to choose? You do, Damian grabbed Ellie's hand. His sincere gaze made Ellie pause for a moment. The boy solemnly said to her, Ellie, you're not worthless. The Duke opened the bottle with the holy water and poured it over the blonde man's head. In an instant, the man's appearance changed. The black magic he had used to disguise himself was purified by the holy water. The man panicked, saying that everything was Aubrey's idea. But Aubrey stubbornly denied knowing anything. You really don't know anything? Fleghill, hearing the Duke suddenly say his surname, froze. Aubrey was stunned, and then realized that she had gotten some of the spilled holy water on herself. Her face had now returned to its original form. Only now did Aubrey truly become afraid. She loudly begged the Duke for mercy. Please, Duke, give me a chance, but there would be no more chances. Watching Aubrey being dragged out by the guards, Ellie sighed in relief. It was finally over. Thanks to Damian's comfort, Ellie felt much better. However, when she saw the Duke, she felt a little guilty. She had been told to stay quietly at home, yet she had caused such a huge mess. The Duke, however, took Ellie's injured hand. His eyes filled with concern as he looked at her. The prolonged mental strain made Ellie feel exhausted. She suddenly collapsed in the Duke's arms, fainting, after the doctor's examination. It was confirmed that Ellie had suffered from mental trauma and frequently faced such episodes. This time, she had finally reached her breaking point. The Duke was silent. This child's earlier tolerance and strength were all forced by reality. I'm such a fool for not knowing this sooner. The Duke went to the dungeon and tortured the priests from the temple. The priests admitted that due to their negligence, the holy water had been stolen. This caused such severe consequences. To compensate, they would meet all of the Duke's demands. Since that was the case, the Duke didn't hold back, he told the priests. In 2 days, I'll send 2 adoption consent forms to the temple. At that time, you can just obediently stamp them. After that, I'll send a marriage consent form for you to handle. The priests were troubled. Adoption was one thing, but marriage had to be reported to the royal family. To avoid angering the Duke, they pretended to agree for now. At that moment, the Duke suddenly cast a spell. Several glowing chains wrapped around the priests' necks. This was a binding spell. If broken, it would result in certain death. The priests realized they had walked right into the Duke's trap. The prairie was silent at night. Only Ellie stood alone here. Am I not in the Duke's mansion? Could this be a dream? Suddenly, there was a commotion from afar. Catch her, don't let her run. At this moment, Ellie suddenly saw a huge figure running away in the distance. Is this a monster? Suddenly, the figure noticed Ellie. It abruptly stopped, staring at her intently. Ellie became tense in an instant. At the same time, she found it strange. Although it was a dream, why did it feel so real? At this moment, a golden light suddenly radiated from Ellie. What's happening to me? The girl had a strange dream. In it, a huge beast stood motionless, staring at her. When she woke up, the feeling was still incredibly real. Damian saw Ellie waking up. He immediately rushed over and hugged her. Ellie suddenly fainting scared him quite a bit. Seeing Damian's worried expression, Ellie took his hand and comforted him, saying that she was fine and had just taken a short nap, feeling much better now. However, everything that had happened earlier still made Damian feel uneasy. He was afraid he hadn't protected Ellie properly. He feared that if Ellie fainted, she might never wake up. His pitiful expression made Ellie feel immense affection. Please don't leave me alone again. How could I possibly refuse such a well-behaved little puppy? Don't worry, I'll never get hurt again. I'll always stay by your side. At that moment, the Duke also came to check on Ellie, asking about her condition. Seeing the Duke's kind tone, Ellie felt a bit uncomfortable. Did you already know the true identity of that priest? No, I only knew she was deliberately approaching you. Asking for an extra share of holy water was part of your plan, right? Ellie didn't expect the Duke to have discovered it so quickly. After Lady Julia left, the Duke's mania could only be purified by holy water. So I wanted to do something for the Duke, but it seems I was too naive. I'm sorry, I won't cause trouble like this again. You don't need to apologize, the Duke said. He didn't think Ellie had done anything wrong. On the contrary, it was he who shouldn't have let Ellie see him when his mania flared up, causing her constant worry and concern. Can I stay here, looking at Ellie's pitiful little face? The Duke gently stroked her hair. You were just saying you wanted to be my daughter. Now, where do you want to go? Though the man wasn't good at expressing himself, his words made Ellie feel incredibly warm. A warm current surged through Ellie's heart. She and Damian could live here, carefree like children. In the palace's grand hall, the emperor sat idly, listening to the ministers discuss matters. These peaceful days bored her to tears. She missed the feeling of personally wielding a sword and killing in battle. It had been 15 years since the war ended, although she had ascended to the throne. The woman she most wanted was still not in her possession. To this day, she found it incredibly regretful. Let's end today's meeting here. A minister suddenly came forward to report. Count Nikolai Fledger wants to see your majesty. This was Aubrey's father. As soon as the emperor saw the man, she exploded with rage. This fool actually manipulated his daughter. He used the temple's name to deceive Duke Schuetz. Count Fledger is still the emperor's confidant. If this matter gets exposed, everyone will think I instructed him to do it. The emperor was thinking about how to distance herself from him when the empress suddenly entered the hall. Your Majesty. Why are you so angry? What's going on? This is none of your concern. The empress was completely unfazed by the emperor's indifference. She walked to his side, took his arm, and tried to comfort him. Didn't Count Flerger say that the Duke of Crade's son has been found? Whenever the Crade family was mentioned, the empress always appeared deeply distressed, as if she truly mourned the tragic death of the Duke and his wife. The emperor was speechless. This woman was too perceptive. If it weren't for the fact that everyone knew the true cause of the Duke's death, one might have really believed the empress was mourning the Crade family. Shouldn't the royal family help that child continue the family line? Hearing this, the emperor grew anxious. Are you suggesting that child inherit the entire merchant group? But the empress's idea was to arrange a marriage for that child. As long as she marries someone arranged by the emperor, then even if she inherits the merchant group, everything will still be under the emperor's control. Upon hearing this, the emperor smiled broadly, as expected of the empress always thinking ahead. The emperor's praise made the woman overjoyed, even though she knew that the emperor was merely indulging in the game. She was determined to hold on to him tightly. Early in the morning, Ellie woke up from bed. But the unfamiliar maid beside her made her pause for a moment. The new maid explained that the previous maids had been called away suddenly and that they would be attending to Ellie for the time being. Looking at the empty bed beside her, Ellie suddenly felt a pang of sadness. She had grown used to everyone being together, but now it felt strange to be alone. Ellie made an excuse to go to the bathroom. In reality, she secretly went to the dungeon. As soon as Ellie entered, she was hit with a strong, foul odor. She saw Aubrey, covered in wounds, lying on the ground. After being backfired by black magic, she was now on the verge of death. When she saw Ellie, she weakly lifted her head. Little beauty, did you come to see me? Ellie got straight to the point and asked her who had learned about Damian's existence and how much did that person know. Aubrey smiled. Don't you want to know who I am? Ellie responded, no need. I already know you are from the Flerger family. It turned out that in the original novel, Aubrey appeared alongside the original heroine, Isabelle. She had done many evil deeds to marry Duke Schuetz, regardless of the means. Did the emperor have any involvement in this? With her life nearing its end, Aubrey confessed everything. The emperor didn't know about this. It was all orchestrated by my father in secret. I gave my entire life to enter the Duke's residence, so I am happy to end my life here. Suddenly, Aubrey reached out her hand from the jail door toward Ellie, looking into her eyes as she muttered. No wonder that person always said he was regretful. This color, it really is so beautiful no matter how you look at it. After saying this, she collapsed onto the ground. The girl only had a small scratch on her hand, but the Duke was heartbroken. Wherever they went, he carried her in his arms, fearing that if she walked even a few steps, the wound would worsen. Isn't this a bit too much, Duke? But the Duke remained unaffected. He even took the opportunity to poke her cheek, unable to stop as he enjoyed the feeling. Ellie recalled Aubrey's words. The emperor probably still didn't know her true identity, but now that the temple was involved, her identity would eventually be exposed. It seemed like she needed to hurry and raise funds and prepare for action. Just then, the Duke entered the dining room holding Ellie. There the Baron and his son were waiting. Ellie greeted them enthusiastically. To her surprise, the two men suddenly knelt to the ground with a thud and apologized to her in unison. Sorry, Miss Ellie, it's all our fault. Ellie then realized they were apologizing for Aubrey's incident. After all, it was Jard who had taken her to the market where they encountered Aubrey. But they didn't know this would happen. It's fine, you all get up, but the Duke did not allow Ellie to let them off so easily. You are about to become a member of the Duke's household. As their vassals, they failed to protect you and should be punished. Now take Gerald's head and hang it outside the city. Ellie couldn't believe her ears. She hurriedly grabbed the Duke's clothes, loudly protesting, how can they be sentenced to death for such a small matter? Seeing Ellie's pleading eyes, the Duke did not make any concessions. This made Ellie angry. If you don't agree, then I won't eat. Saying this, she struggled to pull away from the Duke's arms. Seeing that Ellie was really angry, the Duke had no choice but to agree to let the Baron and his son go. Miss Ellie, thank you so much. Then can you let my maid go as well? Ellie now understood the real reason her maid had disappeared. They must have been implicated and punished, but Ellie couldn't bear it. After spending every day together, Ellie had developed feelings for them. The thought of never seeing them again made her very upset. The Duke, seeing the girl's tears, immediately softened. He promised Ellie that he would release the maids as well, so she should stop crying, okay? At this moment, Damian finished his training and arrived at the dining hall. As soon as Ellie saw him, she easily patted his head. When everyone had gathered, the Duke started talking about the day's business. Soon, Ellie would officially become the adopted daughter of Baron Amanta. Once the adoption papers were finalized, they would immediately begin preparing for Ellie and Damian's wedding. The royal family had already caught wind of it. To prevent any accidents, they must get married quickly. The Duke, with a displeased look, warned the Baron, "You are only Ellie's nominal family. After they marry, Ellie will still live in the Duke's mansion. This is where her true home is." Thinking that he would soon be a real family with Ellie, Damian couldn't help but smile. He had finally waited for this day. After the temple sent the adoption consent letter, Ellie, as the adopted daughter, officially visited the Baron's estate with Damian. "Baron and brother, I look forward to your guidance in the future." Unfortunately, the Baroness was resting due to not feeling well and couldn't meet with them. Ellie felt a little disappointed when she heard this. After some idle chatter, it was getting late, so the two little ones were preparing to return to the Duke's mansion. At this moment, Ellie made a request. The carriage they had come in was covered in dirt that was hard to clean. Before Ellie could finish, Jarek told her that it had already been cleaned. "It's hard to clean with a regular cloth, but with this, it's very easy." Ellie looked at the strange object in Jarek's hand. It was tree bark. Ellie, visiting the Baron's estate for the first time as an adopted daughter, saw a magical item with an extremely strong cleaning ability, the tree bark. This bark came from the regular tree. As soon as it came into contact with water, its absorption rate immediately increased, making it especially effective at removing dirt. Ellie felt like she had discovered a new world. "This is amazing." The regular tree originally came from Duke Croyd, who had given it to Duke Schuetz, and later the Duke had gifted part of it to the Baron, which is how Jarek discovered this wonderful use. Jarek asked Ellie to keep it a secret. If the Duke found out how he was using it, he would surely be angry. Ellie agreed and asked Jarek to give her some bark. She wanted to study and develop it, hoping that it might lead to financial freedom soon. When it was time to leave, the Baron and his son came to see Ellie off. "Then goodbye, brother and Baron," Ellie said, but she paused, realizing it wasn't quite right. "Since we are family now, calling you Baron seems too formal. Let's change the way I address you based on your age. Next time I'll see you as Grandpa." The Baron twitched his mouth as though something felt off. Why did it suddenly feel like he was being treated like a grandparent? Ellie returned home feeling exhausted. Even though she had only been out for a short while, she felt incredibly tired. Meanwhile, Damian still had to go train. What amazing stamina he had. Just as she was about to rest, someone arrived. It was the head maid and the other maids returning. "Miss, thank you for asking the Duke to let us return. We have no way to repay your great kindness." But Ellie felt guilty. She didn't think she deserved such gratitude from them. In fact, she felt more guilty for hiding her identity and deceiving them. "Actually, you all heard it that day. I'm the daughter of a thief. I never told you all. I was afraid that if you knew, you would hate me. But now I don't want to lie to everyone. I really like being here and I really like all of you." Ellie also knew that because of her thief mother's actions, being taken in by the Duke's household meant she was indirectly opposing the royal family. How could she force everyone to accept her? "Miss Ellie, actually, we've known for a long time. The Duke told us the first day you arrived." The maids didn't want Ellie to feel burdened, so they acted as if they didn't know. "As members of the Duke's household, it is our duty to protect you. We will stay by your side, just like before, until you open your heart to us completely." Ellie was deeply moved by these words and teared up. It turned out that no one had rejected her because of her identity, compared to the 3 times she had been abandoned as an elf. Now she had truly found a warm family. That day, the 2 children were playing in the greenhouse garden. Damian carefully wove a flower crown and gave it to Ellie. "Damian, do I look pretty?" "Ellie, you look especially beautiful." They played happily together. Until a stranger suddenly appeared. "Young master, I'm so glad to meet you. I'm Wentiasha Ramay. If you don't mind, can I make a flower crown with you?" A strange girl appeared at the Duke's residence. She suddenly asked to join Damian in making a flower crown, which took both Ellie and Damian by surprise. The girl's name was Wentiasha, and she was a collateral branch of the Crade family. Since she was Damian's relative, Ellie couldn't refuse her request, but Damian's face clearly showed he didn't want to. However, Ellie thought about it more. If this got the Crade family's vassals involved, it might cause trouble for Damian. There was no need to create conflict over something so trivial. To avoid problems, Ellie asked Damian to let Wentiasha join. Reluctantly, Damian nodded in agreement. Ellie tried to teach Wentiasha how to make a flower crown, but the girl completely ignored her. Wentiasha leaned closer to Damian and showed her interest. "Young master, this greenhouse is so beautiful. Can you introduce me to the flowers here?" Damian refused, saying he wasn't familiar with the flowers either. Seeing Wentiasha still clinging to Damian, Ellie kindly tried to help, but Damian rejected her offer. "No, I just want to hear the young master introduce them to me. No need for you, the attendant, to interfere." "Attendant? Oh, so now I'm an attendant?" Ellie thought, realizing that Damian had purposely ignored her. With no choice, Ellie introduced herself. I'm Amanda, the newly adopted daughter of the NJ family. My name is Ellie. When Wentiasha heard this, she immediately apologized to Ellie, saying she had misunderstood earlier and that Ellie shouldn't take offense. Wenthia was walking around the greenhouse garden, her eyes shining. Suddenly, something caught her attention. A patch of vibrant roses drew her gaze, and she hurriedly rushed toward them. She completely ignored Ellie's kind reminder to be careful, and as expected, she kicked a stone. She stumbled magnificently and fell flat on her face, crying like a delicate young lady. It hurts so much, it's killing me. Damian was annoyed by her screaming and suggested taking her to the doctor. But Wenthia said her leg hurt too much and that she couldn't walk, so someone would have to help her. Damian was worried about Ellie getting tired. Reluctantly, Damian helped Wenthia up, and Wenthia immediately gave a beaming smile. Thank you so much, young master. Just then, a loud exclamation rang out. A woman rushed over, pulling Wenthia into her arms, anxiously asking what happened, what's going on, and who are these two? Mother, don't worry, they were just playing with me, Wenthia replied. It's my fault for running around and falling. Ellie thought the mother's attitude was strange. Despite being the guests, they were acting as if they were being guarded against. The mother was relentless and arrogant, saying this can't be let go. A mere servant who's supposed to be accompanying her actually stood by and watched our young miss fall. I will report this to the Duke for proper punishment. Who are you trying to punish? Unexpectedly, the Duke arrived suddenly. The man, with a cold expression, questioned, You want to punish my children in my own garden? The woman, who had been so arrogant a moment ago, was now kneeling and begging for forgiveness, realizing she had dared to scold the Duke's children. The Duke caught her red-handed. Duke, please forgive me, the woman begged. I'm sure the one you need to beg forgiveness from isn't me. The woman quickly turned and knelt before Ellie and Damian. I apologize, it's my fault, please forgive me. At that moment, a man hurried in. It was Wenthia's father, Baron Salome. He immediately scolded Wenthia, saying, You're so reckless, you actually fell in the Duke's garden. Wenthia, looking pitiful, explained, I thought the red roses looked so nice with the Duke's garden, and she cast a spell to show everyone the roses she had picked. I heard that the late Duchess loved red roses, so I wanted to pick some and give them to the Duke, Wenthia added, looking sorrowful. She didn't notice the Duke's gradually cold expression at all. It's all my fault. Please don't blame her, the woman begged, kneeling before Ellie. Her pitiful appearance stirred pity from those around them, but Ellie looked at Wenthia's act coldly, sneering inwardly. They're making it seem like we're the ones forcing them into this, Ellie thought. If we keep pushing this, it could become ammunition for others to attack Damian. We can't let them win. Ellie walked over to Wenthia, gently comforting her. Don't cry. I should be the one to apologize. I'm really sorry that I couldn't go pick the roses for you, Ellie said, which left Wenthia stunned. This wasn't how she had imagined it. You used to treat me as just a servant. I don't blame you since you didn't know the full story. It's normal to misunderstand. It's my fault for not considering everything, Ellie said with sincere words and a tone of genuine kindness that left Wenthia somewhat overwhelmed. Ellie held Wenthia's hand. Next time, let's pick roses from a higher place. You seem so skilled with magic, it should be easy for you to get them. You must have been too excited today and forgot to use your magic, right? Don't worry, I'll take good care of you. Wenthia didn't expect that her intentional fall would be noticed by Ellie, so she could only awkwardly laugh it off. Like Mew realized that Ellie was difficult to deal with. Quickly, under the pretense of healing, she took Ellie away. Inside the room, Shaluomazi was furious, dissatisfied with Wentia's performance today. Her eyes were so clumsy that anyone could see that her fall was deliberate. Like Mew tried to calm Shaluomazi down. But Shaluomazi responded with a big push, and you get out of here. Wentia gasped quietly. She had been insulted by that lowly orphan today and scolded by her father. She had never endured such humiliation. Shaluomazi sighed helplessly and told Wentia. Their family, as the Crade Duke's crabs, had always lived under the shadow of the Duke. After the Duke died, they thought they could finally rise, only to have all the assets taken by Duke Schuetz. Now enduring some grievances is nothing because this is an excellent opportunity. That lowly orphan stole your place, so you must take it back. This is also the task assigned to you by His Majesty the Emperor. If you succeed, our Shaluomai family will receive supreme glory. When Tia was lost in the large book her father had drawn for her, indeed. That position should have been mine. I must take back what belongs to me. These two women spent their days dreaming absurd dreams. One fantasized about becoming the future Duchess. The other sought to seize the property of the Merchant Guild. For this reason, Shaluomazi even invited the highest-ranking official of the Merchant Guild, the late Crade Duke's mentor, Mr. Hupo, to attempt negotiations with Duke Schuetz to release Damian back to the Crade Duke's household, hoping to control the Duke's heir. Meanwhile, when Tia followed her father's plan to get close to Damian, it was such a coincidence to meet you here, young master, but Damian showed no reaction and walked right past her. When Tia didn't expect to be ignored like this, she reached out to grab him. Young master, why didn't you acknowledge me just now? That was rude. Sorry, who are you? Damian's indifferent tone made Wentia feel quite embarrassed. I'm Wentia, we met last week in the greenhouse. Damian thought for a moment, then remembered. I think I remember you. Young master, I'm here specifically to apologize, and I also want to get closer to you, she said as she took Damian's hand. But Damian immediately shook her off. Don't touch me. Just then the head maid delivered a note. It turned out that Ellie had something to do and instructed Damian to train well, saying she would return soon. Damian smiled after reading the note. Ignoring Wentia's obstruction, Damian returned to the training ground. Although he had already trained for most of the day, he would finish whatever Ellie asked him to do. This was a struggle for the servant who had to accompany him. They were truly exhausted, and no one noticed Wentia standing nearby. The feeling of being ignored drove him mad. It was all that companion's fault. I will never let him off. Ellie was out today to inquire about Talim's weapon development. But he was mysteriously keeping things confidential, and the research on the Rigor tree bark had also concluded. How could he promote the tree bark without making it seem forced? While Ellie was planning her unemployed future. A sudden noise came from the nearby woods, and Ellie was attacked and fell to the ground, injuring her ankle, when Tia suddenly appeared. He used magic to lift a large rock and threw it at Ellie. It's all because of you. If it weren't for you, I would be the daughter-in-law of the Schuetz Duke's family. Fortunately, Ellie dodged in time. She coldly stared at Wentia, asking him what was wrong with him. But Wentia wouldn't listen. He only wanted Ellie dead. He used his magic to pour water from the red tiger onto his own head, trying to create the illusion that he had fallen into the water. I'll tell my father that you pushed me into the lake out of jealousy, and I drowned because I lost my footing. Wentia was proud of his brilliant plan, but Ellie just rolled her eyes at his stupidity. Doesn't your eye hurt? Before Wentia could react, his eyes suddenly throbbed with sharp pain. He screamed and cursed, you damn girl, what did you do? Ellie responded with exasperation, what does it have to do with me? The water hurts your eyes, didn't you ask for it? Wentia, driven to madness, cursed Ellie, the lowly orphan who stole his life. Is being an orphan really so lowly, isn't it? My father said that people like you, lowly beings, tarnish the earth and you all deserve to die, Talim. With Ailey's call, a large number of crows gathered in the air above the forest, creating an eerie atmosphere that frightened Wentia. Ailey then walked up to him and looked down from above. You shouldn't have provoked me, Wentia. Shocked, Wentia, who had hoped to replace Ailey's esteemed position, now found himself wanting to fake an accident to harm Ailey. However, she was too inexperienced, only summoning the vast crows to surround him. Wentia was so scared that he fainted. Ailey was speechless. We haven't even started and he's already out cold. In the Duke's meeting room, Viscount Shaluomai looked at Mr. Hupo, who was calmly sipping tea beside him. In order to acquire the Crade family assets, they must bring Damian back. He wasn't sure what Mr. Hupo was thinking or if he would help him. At this time, Duke Schuetz arrived. As soon as he sat down, Viscount Shaluomai was about to speak. To everyone's surprise, Damian, the main subject of the meeting, also entered the room. He bowed politely and introduced himself. Then he quietly sat down, ignoring everyone around him as if nothing concerned him. The Duke couldn't help but mutter, this kid is completely different without Ailey. Viscount Shaluomai thanked the Duke for taking care of Damian, but the Duke shot back as his guardian, isn't that only natural? Just say what you want to say. Viscount Shaluomai no longer beat around the bush and directly proposed that Damian be brought back to the Crade family. They even wanted to arrange for Damian to marry a young lady from the Ponzi family. Lionian, what nonsense are you talking about? The Duke interrupted them ruthlessly. You don't care at all about what this child has gone through. You've never asked what he's been through. Now you're suddenly acting like you care for him. If that's not nonsense, then what is? Viscount Salome wasn't intimidated. If you don't agree, we'll have to take strong measures. After all, the Crade Duke left the merchant group to Damian, not to young master. These words angered the Duke. What are you even? How dare you speak so arrogantly? Just then, the head maid barged into the meeting room. My lord, something's wrong. Miss Ellie and Miss Salome are both injured. Damian immediately reacted and rushed to Ellie's side. Are you hurt? Where does it hurt? I'm fine, Damian. This was Viscount Salome asking after Wentiasha. Ellie felt speechless at this scene. She was the one injured, yet Wentiasha was pretending to be the weak one. Wentiasha threw herself into her father's arms, wailing as if she had suffered an immense injustice. Viscount Salome took this opportunity to accuse Ellie of bullying his daughter. Wentiasha also played along, dramatically presenting herself as the innocent, wronged person in front of everyone. Ellie was furious. This was so detrimental to their cause. At that moment, the Duke stood up. Since you've started questioning us, let me ask you, what have you done to my child? Ellie froze. Did he just say my child? Seeing his beloved child being bullied, the Duke immediately stepped forward to protect Ellie. But the scheming girl, with her father's support, slandered Ellie, claiming she had pushed her into the lake. The ignorant onlookers, seeing the red stains on Wentiasha's clothes, immediately believed her words. They scolded Ellie for her cruel methods, and Viscount Salome seized the moment, demanding that the Duke punish Ellie. Even if you cut off her head right now, it wouldn't satisfy me. But the next moment, Damian threw a cup of water at her. Young master, what are you doing? I threw water on you, your clothes just got a bit wet. But your daughter claims she fell into the lake, yet her clothes are only stained on the upper half. How do you explain that? Viscount Salome tried to argue that's because the clothes dried after a long time. Then why is it only the upper half of her clothes that has red marks? Ellie's remark made everyone realize something was off. Is Miss Wentiasha lying? She's bold, daring to lie right in front of the Duke. Mr. Hupo, who had been quietly listening, also frowned at the unfolding situation. Wentiasha, who had been so confident earlier, immediately panicked. Her emotions collapsed, and she began to babble in a panic. Father said the place by young master's side is mine, but young master always listens to that girl crying endlessly. I just wanted to show her a lesson. Viscount Salome tried to shut her up but was too late. Upon hearing this, the Duke's expression darkened completely, his eyes cold as ice, the atmosphere so tense it seemed like he would tear the father and daughter apart at any second. This incident ruined Viscount Salome's plan, and the pair of father and daughter, humiliated and ashamed, quickly fled the Duke's mansion. After everyone left, the Duke carefully examined Ellie's injured ankle, feeling deeply concerned. Why do you always get hurt? How much more do you need to make us worry before you're satisfied? Damian also felt deeply upset. Didn't you promise me you wouldn't get hurt again? Seeing their worried expressions, Ellie felt guilty and quickly apologized, promising that this would be the last time and that she would be more careful in the future. But the Duke and Damian no longer believed her, seeing Ellie truly being pleasing to the eyes. The Duke quickly comforted her. I didn't mean to blame you. I'm just worried because, after what happened just now, many similar incidents will occur in the future. After everyone finds out about your background, your path ahead will be even harder. Ellie knew that the Duke was right. Then the Duke and Damian will also suffer more because of me, right? But it's okay. I will always protect you. Just believe in me. Don't do dangerous things to prove yourself. Leave the adult matters to me. All you need to do is play and dream of a wonderful tomorrow. Sleeping soundly, that's what children should do. Ellie didn't expect that the Duke would go so far for her. Even knowing her background, the Duke chose to accept and care for her. Is this what it feels like to have a father? Ellie looked at Damian, the boy who once didn't care about anything. Now, with his emotions severed, he was always thinking about her. Ellie didn't want to disappoint his sincere heart. She gently stroked Damian's little face. Damian, I will be the person standing by your side. I will be your strong support, making sure no one can harm you, so let's get married. The beloved girl suddenly proposed, catching Damian off guard. She blushed and repeatedly confirmed with Ellie, you mean we will become husband and wife? Yes. You don't want to, Damian quickly denied. The overwhelming feeling of happiness made her cheeks blush to the roots of her ears. She tightly grasped Ellie's hand. With every word she said, I do. The Duke was pleased with Damian's affectionate response, and Ellie's pragmatic nature had won him over. You really know how to handle things. I think that person will be happy as well. Ellie wondered, who is that person? At that moment, a man entered the room. It's an honor to see everyone again. I'm Helen Lupp, and I will be responsible for assisting both of you in the future. Ellie remembered that after the Crade Duke's death, it was thanks to Helen Lupp that the Merchant Guild was able to continue operating smoothly. Therefore, when it came to confirming Damian's qualifications, Ellie was more serious than anyone else. For this reason, Damian went through very tough tests. It wasn't until Damian turned 15 and went to the battlefield that Helen Lupp finally confirmed him. This meant that Helen Lupp's appearance now indicated that Ellie and Damian's marriage would soon face trials. Ellie couldn't help but lament internally, I just proposed and now the test begins. She's not as easy to deal with as when Tia, Ellie thought, but since the Duke sent her, it means she won't harm us. Helen Lupp, as the most loyal member of the Crade family once she becomes their ally. Not only will she pay attention to Damian, but she will also become a strong support for me. With this thought, Ellie bent down and greeted her. Hello, Lady Lupp. My name is Ellie. I look forward to working with you. The next day, Ellie came as promised for the lesson, but she found the room was filled with toys. Along with all sorts of desserts and treats, Ellie was a bit confused. What did Mr. Lupp want by bringing her here alone? Ellie picked up a basket of candies from the floor and tasted the delicious treats. Good afternoon, Miss Ellie. Sorry to have kept you waiting, Helen Lupp greeted her. After some small talk, Ellie became a little nervous when she saw Helen Lupp's serious expression. What does she want to say? Before we begin the lesson, could you give me a candy? This ridiculous request caught Ellie off guard. She was about to reach for the candy. Suddenly realizing that the lake's request couldn't be this simple, she knew she couldn't take it lightly. From being a lowly orphan, she had jumped to becoming the future Duchess. She was definitely worried that I might become arrogant or cunning. Even though there were so many desserts, she deliberately chose the most inconspicuous candy. This must be part of the test. Ellie offered a pudding. I'll let you have this, it's sweet and soft, it looks like it suits you. Ellie replied kindly yet politely, I'm getting older and my teeth aren't as good. Thank you for thinking of me, Miss Ellie, but actually I really like this candy and want to eat it alone. Appropriately showing the candor expected of a child should make her lower her guard, the lake glanced at Ellie. Smiling, she thanked Ellie. The two of them tasted their desserts in the eerie silence of the moment. The girl had just been asked to marry, and the next second an elder appeared to test her. Using the excuse of a lesson to meet Ellie alone, though she had other intentions. The lake wanted Ellie to spare the Shalom family, because each generation of the Shalom family had a powerful destiny. They ensured the smooth circulation of goods in the merchant guild. If the Shalom family were to face capital punishment and lost their help, the operation of the guild would be greatly affected. Ellie knew the lake's words made sense. She didn't dare ask the Duke to be merciful, so she came to her for help. If she did, the Duke might let it go. Ellie thought about how to respond to satisfy the lake, but her silence caused the lake to feel a bit dissatisfied. She hesitated for too long. From what had happened earlier, it was clear that this child was quick-witted and acted decisively, yet now she was hesitating over such a small request. It seems I was wrong about her. The lake took out a document and handed it to Ellie. If you agree to forgive them, please sign it here. I beg you. Ellie didn't say anything more. She just signed her name on the document. The lake sighed, realizing she was still a child. After achieving his goal, the lake stood up to leave, and Ellie, with an expectant expression, asked, when will the next lesson be? She was really looking forward to seeing him again. Looking at Ailey's innocent face, the lake felt a little regretful. Although this child was very clever and adorable, the test was over. The Duke was surprised when he heard Ellie had signed. This child didn't seem like someone who would act recklessly, but it was indeed her voluntary signature. Now, please keep your promise. It turned out that this whole thing was part of an agreement between the Duke and the lake. If Ellie signed this fake document, the Duke would forgive the Shalom family. At that time, the Duke was confident that Ellie wouldn't sign recklessly. But now the lake felt he had won, yet the Duke looked at the signature and smiled. Ellie really didn't disappoint him. Lake, it seems you lost to Ellie, impossible. The lake looked at the signature on the document. It was indeed Ailey's name, but wait, look closely. She added Kraid at the end. It turned out that the Empire's rules required the family name to follow the signature, so as long as Ellie signed Ailey Amanta, it was fine. But now Ellie had added Kraid as a suffix. If the lake accepted this document, it would mean he acknowledged her as Damian's wife. And that Damian was from the Kraid family's daughter. The lake finally understood he hadn't just lost, he had lost completely. I've told you countless times not to underestimate Ailey. Ailey smiled brightly at the man in front of her. Hello, I didn't expect we'd meet so soon. Hubo looked at Ailey, feeling a bit awkward. It seemed the child had already known she would come back to find her. Do you know I was just testing you? Yes, I know. Hubo was surprised. She didn't expect the child to be so thoughtful, predicting her predictions. She lost the test but accepted it willingly. A person like her was worth supporting wholeheartedly. She once again bowed to Ailey. Helen, Hubo will serve you from now on. Ailey smiled. With Lord Hubo's assistance, the future path for herself and Damian would be much smoother. Please take care of me in the future. After Ailey successfully gained Hubo's recognition, Hubo became her mentor and assisted Ailey wholeheartedly. She taught her various courses. Originally, Ailey thought she would be taught how to be a good hostess. But unexpectedly, Hubo taught her economics, the relationship between class stratification and the wealth gap. Ailey noticed that the Kraid Merchant Guild had hired many female employees, most of whom had children. In order to relieve their living pressures, the Merchant Guild had created special programs. Ailey admired the decision-makers of the guild. They didn't hold any bias against these women due to the low status of women in this world. Ailey seemed as if she wanted to say something but hesitated. She mentioned a familiar aunt who, after giving birth, had a great need for diapers, but for commoners, disposable diapers were too extravagant. She had to use old clothes to make diapers. She would wash them repeatedly every day, which was very exhausting. Those female employees might also have similar worries. Looking at Hubo's thoughtful expression, Ailey seized the opportunity to bring up the topic, introducing Hubo to the regal tree she had discovered at Lord Nanjeo's house. The tree's bark was highly absorbent, and even after use it remained dry, which made it perfect for making diapers and similar products. Hubo was deeply inspired and quickly discussed it with Jarrett. They created a sample diaper from the regal tree bark, named it Dry Comfort, and conducted a small-scale trial within the guild. Not only could newborn babies use it, but it also provided convenience for women during special periods and elderly people. It received an overwhelming amount of praise, and after being launched in the market, it quickly gained recognition. Hubo shared the good news with Ellie and praised her idea as brilliant. At this time, Ellie proposed another idea, to sell it to the guild staff at a price below market value. She also suggested providing a certain quantity of dry comfort to women of childbearing age and staff with babies every month. This was also Ellie's personal interest. In this world, there were not many women who worked outside, most were housewives. Against this social backdrop, women who worked outside the home were seen as especially brave. Ellie's proposal was to provide the most basic welfare for them. Hubo strongly agreed with the idea. This way, more people would be encouraged to work for the guild. But Ellie's plans didn't stop there. A few days later, Ellie and Jarrett visited the orphanage. They donated funds and dry comfort on behalf of the Crade Merchant Guild. Ellie was deeply grateful to Jarrett for accompanying her in everything. Luckily, with her own plan, she was able to proceed smoothly. Ellie recalled her time at the orphanage. The young children there, lacking care, were often afraid of the dark at night and would wet their beds. They could only wash the blankets with their small hands the next day. When girls reached puberty, they were kicked out of the orphanage because their special period each month increased the orphanage's expenses. Ellie donated these supplies not only out of kindness, but also hoping that these children would have a good impression of the Merchant Guild. When they grew up, they could help the guild. A voice called out to Ellie. It turned out to be Grace, the girl delivering supplies to the orphanage. It was a coincidence that Grace ran into Ellie, but when Grace saw Ellie, she felt deeply guilty. This was because she had rashly told the fake priest Aubrey about Ellie's situation, causing Ellie to get hurt and face danger, but Ellie didn't mind at all. Thanks to Grace, she was able to resolve the Aubrey issue earlier than in the original story, preventing more people from sacrificing. She hugged the crying Grace and comforted her, saying this was not your intention. So don't feel guilty or sad anymore, soon it was time to leave. On the way back, Jarrett asked Ellie if she wanted to visit the Holy Orphanage. Ellie thought about it but declined. Although she wanted to go back to the place she once lived, now was not the time. She didn't have enough power to change their situation. When she had a way to make everyone happy, she would definitely return. Gan Shuangbao officially launched in the market and quickly received a lot of positive reviews. Ellie looked at the report with satisfaction while the Duke held her in his arms. He was feeding her snacks, and Jarrett reported the sales situation to the Duke every week, while Ellie and Hupo listened to lessons together. Ellie was immersed in the smooth taste of chocolate when she suddenly remembered that everyone had been saying she had gained weight recently. The Duke poked her little face and said, "Where's the fat? Have another one." Just then Hupo and Jarrett arrived. Ellie warmly greeted them. As soon as Jarrett sat down, he started reporting the sales situation of Gan Shuangbao. Whether in the market or within the Merchant Guild, the purchase rate had been rising, especially the free trial plan proposed by Ellie, which led many satisfied customers to repurchase. At this point, Jarrett had something to tell the Duke, but when she saw him, she became nervous and her condition flared up. To ease her nervousness, Ellie handed her a chocolate. "Every time I eat this, I feel full of energy, so you should eat one too. Good luck." Ellie's considerate gesture deeply moved Jarrett. She was about to take it but was intercepted by the Duke, who directly put it in his own mouth, savoring it and smiling in satisfaction. "It's sweet." Ellie was annoyed. "You don't even like sweets. Why are you stealing from me?" Jarrett, seeing this, dared not delay and directly shared her thoughts. To improve long-term purchase rates, we also need to donate to other places, such as the academy. If students there are satisfied after trying, they will become our consumers when they grow up. Ellie was very satisfied with Jarrett's idea. The Duke also encouraged her to go ahead with it, but warned that if it didn't go well, she would have to face punishment. Ellie picked up a chocolate and actively fed it to the Duke, thanking him for agreeing with Jarrett's proposal. "This is a gift for you, I hope you'll accept it." It was rare for Ellie to actively show her goodwill, and the Duke gladly accepted. Just then, Hupo reminded the Duke, "We need to start preparing for the young master and Miss Ellie's wedding." Now the Emperor has also heard the rumors, and to prevent any accidents, they need to hurry and arrange the marriage. However, the Duke feels like his family's cabbage is being taken by someone else, and he looks unhappy. He lowered his head to ask Ellie's opinion, but Ellie showed full anticipation for the wedding. "I love Damian so much, I must marry him," she said, then couldn't wait to rush and share the good news with Damian. Seeing Ellie so delighted, the Duke felt heartbroken. "I've raised my daughter for nothing. I've treated her so well, yet she left without a second glance." The Duke could only vent his anger on the innocent Jarrett, who silently lamented in his heart. "Miss Ellie, please take me with you," he begged. After the wedding date between Ellie and Damian was confirmed, the Duke's household was busy with preparations, and Ellie became increasingly nervous as the wedding approached. Although she was just going through the motions, she couldn't help but feel anxious. The main issue was that Ellie had rarely seen Damian recently. at least before they could have meals together. But with the increasing number of lessons arranged for Damian by Lord Hupo, even the little time they had to meet was gone. Now they could only meet before going to bed. However, Damian had to get up early every day for his lessons, and Ellie was reluctant to disturb his rest. While she understood Hupo's urgency in wanting to cultivate the air, Damian was only 11 years old and also needed time to relax and play. For Damian's well-being and balanced growth, Ellie decisively escaped through the window. She was going to find Damian. The boy was attentively listening to the lesson, and his excellent learning ability even made Hupo praise him. His focus and comprehension were truly extraordinary, but whenever Hupo mentioned anything about Ellie, Damian would immediately shift his attention, his gaze alert like a beast watching her. His concern for Ellie was so evident. Truly, he was a descendant of the Crade family. The previous heads of the Crade family were all unconditional in their devotion to their wives, doting on them madly. They were ruthless towards enemies but hid this side perfectly when facing their wives. Hupo suspected that Ellie didn't know about Damian's other side. After all, in front of Ellie, Damian was always the gentle, well-behaved boy. It was thanks to Miss Ellie that she not only uncovered the conspiracy of Viscount Kohler and the tricks of the Chaluome family, but she also showed exceptional business acumen. However, Hupo couldn't fully trust Ellie yet, as the future developments were more important. A maid came to find Hupo to report something after Hupo left. Damian looked out the window, wondering what Ellie was doing. The brief moments they shared before bed couldn't soothe his longing for Ellie. He really wanted to stay by her side. The next moment, Ellie's figure appeared outside the window. The person he had been thinking about suddenly appeared. Damian was greatly surprised and looked at the girl's radiant smile. His heartbeat quickened. "Did you hear my heart?" Ellie grabbed Damian's hand. "Come with me." "Wait, if Lord Hupo finds out that the maid deliberately diverted her, it will be too late." Damian hesitated, stepping onto the windowsill. "Where are we going?" "Of course, to have fun." The two children arrived in the woods. Looking at the vast snow, Damian didn't understand Ellie's intentions. Ellie rolled up a snowball and threw it at a large tree. "Let's have a snowball fight together." Ellie thoughtfully put gloves on Damian. Damian felt that Ellie had a magical power. Even though she was right beside him, he couldn't bear to be apart from her for even a moment. He just wanted to stay with her forever. The boy's gaze was warm, though he didn't yet understand that this stirring feeling in his heart was love. Suddenly, a snowball landed at his feet, pulling his thoughts back. Damian was startled and a bit aggrieved. Ellie smiled and comforted him. The two little ones began a snowball fight in the vast snowy field. The woods echoed with their joyful laughter. The boy skipped class for the first time just to play with the girl he loved. The two little ones played in the snow all day, until they were so tired they collapsed in the snow, laughing foolishly. It was only then that Ellie realized they had reached the edge of the Red Lake, a cursed lake that had claimed many lives. But why were the trees by the lake so full of life despite the polluted waters? And they looked even sturdier than the ones elsewhere. Ellie told Damian her doubts. She also thought the various rumors about the lake were strange. Ellie thought back carefully to the original story about Red Lake. The protagonist, Asable, had once discovered a red gem. But it wasn't just any ordinary gem. It was a red divine stone. As long as one injected spiritual energy into it, the divine stone could be used indefinitely. The Duke's household gained the same authority as the temple because they possessed the divine stone. Before this, the Duke had suspected Asable of being a spy sent by the temple, but after this incident, she opened her heart to the protagonist. But the current locations where divine stones were found were all under the control of the temple, so where had Asable discovered it? Ellie unconsciously moved closer to the Red Lake. Could it be in the Red Lake? Just then, Damian suddenly grabbed Ellie's hand. "Didn't you promise me you wouldn't put yourself in danger again? Were you just about to go near the Red Lake?" Faced with Damian's question, Ellie couldn't speak. To avoid worrying him, she gave up on exploring. She took Damian's hand and they headed home together. On the way, Ellie asked about Damian's schoolwork. Although he had a heavy workload, she found it very interesting. The book said that ancient humans used magic to cultivate plants and infuse them with spiritual energy. This statement suddenly gave Ellie an idea. She realized why the trees by the Red Lake were so robust. Ellie excitedly thanked Damian. She prepared herself, took a deep breath, and shouted into the sky, "Talim." Soon a raven appeared, circling overhead. Damian was shocked to see the raven transform into a circle. Ellie didn't have time to explain to him. She asked Talim to gather branches and leaves from the tree. Talim transformed back into a raven and began frantically pecking at the tree trunk. Suddenly, something fell from the tree trunk. Ellie hurried over to check. As she expected, it was a red gem. Talim immediately recognized it as the divine stone. She swore on her 500 years of birdsong that this was definitely the divine stone. Ellie was overjoyed, unable to express her excitement. Now she was going to get rich. The boy and girl skipped class to play and had fun. On their way home, they ran into their teacher. Did you two have fun? Ellie felt a bit embarrassed and apologized to the lake. But this time she had an unexpected gain. Ellie pulled out the red divine stone. We found this. This huge discovery left the lake completely stunned. Ellie asked with a cheerful smile whether the trip was worth it. The lake carefully examined the divine stone. He felt that the various anomalies around the Red Lake should be related to it, and the people who died near the Red Lake most likely didn't drown, but instead died due to uncontrolled spiritual power. The human body already has spiritual power, but forcibly injecting more spiritual power than what the body can handle will cause illness or even death. The discovery of the divine stone might clear the curse allegations against the Schuetz territory. The lake first confirmed that Ellie indeed had more impressive abilities compared to her peers. But at the same time, he raised some questions. Where did you find this, and how did you know that this was the divine stone? Ellie felt a bit guilty, but fortunately she quickly explained that it was Talim who told her when they were playing together. The lake thought for a moment and felt it made sense. The crow people indeed knew more about the divine stone. So how did you think of looking for the divine stone in the tree? At this point, Ellie didn't know how to explain. Just then, Damian touched her shoulder, giving her a hint. Damian told me he shared something from class with me and I got the inspiration from that. Damian confirmed it's true. Although the divine stone would greatly help their business, the lake also worried that their friction with the temple would increase in the future. This was also Ailey's concern. In the original story, the female-led Isabel mediated the conflict between the two. She wondered if discovering the divine stone early would cause any problems. The lake told the Duke about Ailey's discovery. The Duke was stunned when he saw the divine stone. Looking at the clear, transparent ruby, the Duke's thoughts were taken back to the past. Back then, Yulia was still by her side. On that day, Yulia wanted a ruby as beautiful as the Duke's eyes and wanted the Duke to go with her to buy it. The Duke pinned a rose in Ailey's hair. Why do I need to go? Because you need to choose one too. I want you to buy a green gem, one with the same color as my eyes. But now, the Duke had searched everywhere and there was no gem in the world with the same color as hers. The Duke ordered the lake to extract all the divine stones and release them first in the Eastern market, but without announcing that they were divine stones. They would have to compete with the temple. This was to strike at the temple's financial sources, because the Eastern temple had not approved Damian's marriage authorization yet. This was also a good opportunity to pressure them, but under whose name should they sell the divine stones? They couldn't directly reveal Ailey's name, but they also wanted to show control over the temple. The lake thought of a suitable person and the Duke understood. That person was Ailey's family member, her nominal older brother, Jarrett. After waiting for what felt like an eternity, after the previous 62 levels of hope, finally Ailey and Damian's marriage arrived. Since the Duke released the divine stones into the Eastern market, they had become an easily accessible commodity. Fearing they would lose the market to the Duke's low-priced competition, the temple approved Damian and Ailey's marriage authorization overnight in exchange for reclaiming the Schuetz family's divine stones. Finally, the day of the wedding arrived. Ailey was woken up early by her maids to get ready and dress up. She wore a beautiful rose on her head and a pure white wedding dress. Ailey, looking at herself in her grand attire, felt a little uncomfortable. The maids couldn't help but marvel at her beauty, saying, "You are the most beautiful and charming bride in the world." Just then, the adjutant Anti came to ask how Ailey was preparing, and he was immediately stunned by her beauty. Before she could speak, the Duke pushed her aside. "Who told you to casually meet the bride?" In front of them, Ailey looked like a fairy from a fairy tale world, her dress flowing gracefully like a lily blooming in the morning light, pure and elegant. The Duke unconsciously froze for a while, then snapped back to reality at Ailey's expectant gaze. The Duke kept praising her, so beautiful, truly beautiful. Ailey noticed the rope knot at the Duke's waist, which she had woven herself. "Did you wear it on purpose, Duke?" But why did her expression seem a bit lonely? It was as if a father were sending his daughter off to marry. "Today, let me be your father." The Duke suggested holding Ailey's hand to lead her in. This should have been the bride's father's role, but her foster father, Count Amintanen, dared not compete with him and quickly said it was not his place. The Duke extended his hand to Ailey. "All right, daughter, let's go now." "Okay, Dad," under the gaze of friends and family. The Duke accompanied Ailey in slowly, but his expression remained quite somber. Although today was for Damian to marry, why did he feel like he was sending his daughter off? Ailey felt somewhat confused. She had just been so cheerful, so why was this happening now? She quietly reminded the Duke to manage his expression and not always look like he was about to cut someone. Damian, dressed in a white tuxedo, had been waiting for Ailey for a long time. Seeing the girl he loved in her wedding dress standing next to him, Damian blushed unconsciously. Today, Damian was not his usual calm self. As a first-time groom, he was so nervous that he didn't know what to do, only knowing to praise how beautiful Ailey looked, the most beautiful in the world. The officiant announced the official start of Damian and Ellie's wedding ceremony. In front of everyone, they exchanged their eternal vows of love. Finally, the couple was asked to seal their vows with a kiss. Unexpectedly, the Duke became unhappy after hearing this. Such young children, what do you want them to do? The officiant hurried to explain that this was part of the normal process and they just needed to kiss on the cheek. The Duke looked like he was about to lose his temper. Ellie quickly planted a kiss on Damian's cheek, causing his face to turn completely red. She was so shocked that she stepped back several meters. The Duke was extremely displeased. He ordered Anti to tie up the officiant. With the blessings of everyone, the wedding came to a successful end. The officiant dramatically disappeared from view. The Duke approached the newlyweds, congratulating them. From now on, we are truly a family. Ellie was filled with emotions. As the daughter of a thief with a lowly bloodline and once deemed useless, her identity had once been despised by everyone, but today she finally had a new name and a family. Amidst the blessings of friends and family, Ellie and Damian's wedding was perfectly completed. At the wedding banquet, the Baroness Biera, Ellie's foster mother, came to bless her. Due to illness, she had not been able to meet Ellie before but had specifically come to thank her. Biera looked at her husband and son. She admitted that thanks to Ellie's help, their family had been able to get along so harmoniously. She even felt that her illness had improved a lot, looking at the girl's cute little face. Biera couldn't help but stroke her hair. Then she suddenly remembered that Ellie was now the Duke's wife. Biera quickly apologized for her impulsive behavior. In fact, after Ellie became the Duke's wife, Biera felt much more at ease because now no one could easily harm her, even if it was His Majesty the Emperor. Ellie, upon hearing this, seemed a bit puzzled. She was the daughter of a thief, and the Emperor would surely look down on her. But why would the madam be worried that the Emperor would harm her? Ellie was more concerned about the Duke and Damian. She was worried the Emperor would use her as an excuse to hurt them. So at the right moment, she would have to break off the engagement. Just then, Jarrett's arrival interrupted Ellie's thoughts. He had a proposal. He was considering opening a salon. In fact, she had thought about this idea a long time ago. But her father said it wasn't something a man should do and strongly opposed it. Ellie, however, was very much in favor of the proposal. The main clientele of the salon would be women. If they provided dry and refreshing products for guests for free, it would definitely help with publicity. Additionally, since the salon would attract many customers, it would become a hotspot for rumors. It would also make it easier for them to gather useful intelligence. There were many benefits, and they could make money, so it was a great opportunity they couldn't miss. Brother, I'll cheer for you. You must work hard. Ellie's encouragement greatly boosted Jarrett's confidence. He wanted Ellie to give more advice on the salon business. After all, even Lord Hubo said that with Ellie's help, the salon business would thrive. Ellie felt relieved in her heart. Hubo had finally started to acknowledge her abilities. Brother, let's start discussing this now. Inside the Imperial Palace, the Empress coldly listened to the maid's report about which concubine the Emperor favored tonight. After hearing the report, the Empress froze for a moment. The favored woman had green eyes. She sighed helplessly. Why do men always obsess over what they can't have? She couldn't just eliminate all the women with green eyes. To her surprise, 15 years had passed. The Emperor still couldn't forget that woman. The Empress found herself a bit ridiculous. She had once believed that with her own charm, she could make the Emperor fall hopelessly in love with her. But after marrying the Emperor, she had allowed her half-sister, Layli, to become his lover. They looked almost like twins, yet the Emperor still took her into the harem. In the Empress's eyes, Layli was cunning, lowly, and even had the ability to move others.